All right, and then we're live. Okay, so I'm gonna take us live,
All right.
and I'll introduce you, and then we'll get underway.
Very good. Ready to go.
Oh, I think I went live before I meant to go live, but that's okay. So, welcome to Great Train Layouts Live, where we look at track plans using the power of train simulation software. Today, we have a very special guest and a very special episode. And usually on these live streams, we're building the layout and then play testing it. But tonight, we are just doing the play testing and we are going big. We are going with a layout that you've probably heard before if you keep tabs of the Model Railroad Press, seen it in places like Railroad Model Craftsman or Model Railroader. Uh, it is the Conrail Onondaga Cutoff, and I'm especially pleased to be joined here by its creator, Dave Abeles. Dave, welcome to Great Train Layouts Live.
Nick, it's a pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure to be here. And I can see myself on the meet here at Google. I'm not sure if I'm through the YouTube yet, but hopefully everybody can hear me and see me. And it's a pleasure to be with you. This is a sort of a new aspect of the hobby that I'm really excited to be part of today. A lot of fun.
It's good to have you on. And yeah, I see it on my end too. It's like sometimes I'm seeing your face and sometimes I'm not. So I'm going to leave it up there so occasionally you're able to smile and wave at people. Um, and oh, I think you need to raise your audio a little bit just to make sure that you're equal with us. Try say something now briefly so I can make sure my audio is good.
Yeah, we're coming to you live
Oh,
from New
good.
Jersey here on the Onondaga Cutoff.
Alrighty. So, what we're going to do today, guys, is of course, throughout all of this, I encourage you to leave your comments if you're watching this live. Also, feel free to leave comments if you're watching this on repeat. But if you're leaving your comments live, we'll try to respond to them. What we're going to do is we're going to do an overview of what is the layout, the design behind it. We're going to do a kind of flyover to get our sense of bearings. And then we're going to go really deep into the operations. We're going to try to break down how this railroad is run because that is so incredible in its own right. So, Dave, and I'll say hello to Carmen and Millennial Modeler. Good to see you guys on tonight. So, Dave, perhaps start us off with led what is what is the Onondaga cutoff, and what led you to choose to model this?
So the Onondaga Cutoff is a HO scale model railroad. It's based on Conrail's operations through central New York, around Syracuse, New York, and it's set in the mid 1990s. And I've sort of a long story, and those of you who have heard the stories either on a Modeler's Life podcast, which I highly recommend, um, model railroad articles, Rare Model Craftsman, model railroad planning, and there's even a couple books now, which has been an exciting journey. All of this stuff is based around childhood memories from a great time in my life when my family was excited to be making family trips. We had my mom, she was one of 8 kids in the Dean family outside Syracuse, New York, and so we would make these pilgrimages up there, family trips up, and we'd stay with family and time with cousins, and it would always include me begging for time to go watch trains. So my uncles or my mom or my dad would take me and my brother and a gaggle of kids, cousins, over to the railroad tracks, and we'd drive up into town from the Southwest, and we'd be dropped off at the train station when it was over by the DeWitt Yard, and they'd let us, back in the 80s and 90s, you just let your kids there for the whole day, and it was no big deal. And so we would watch trains all day, and the excitement, the passion, the anticipation of that, I'd look forward to it for weeks and weeks and weeks to come. And the memories lasted even longer than that, obviously. So the Onondaga Cutoff is my tribute to those times, and it's a way to bring people together. So the goal of the layout is absolutely 100% operations, and to bring operations to the forefront means you need multiple people. And so that vision of that excitement and that euphoria is what brings us together once every month or two. And we bring Conrail's Chicago line operation into HO scale in 12-hour increments on a 3-to-1 fast clock, at least 10 times a year. That's the goal. And it's been a lot of fun, sharing the railroad through the pages of the publications and the books, and over on A Modeler's Life has been great. And it matches the intensity of what we do with the operating sessions. So it's a real pleasure. It's a lot of fun.
So let's do a little bit of a flyover because we are going to go deep into those operations. You mentioned that this is these sessions involve a multitude of people serving a multitude of roles. We're going to do that with one person who's new to these operations, but has studied the timetable extensively, but also has the beauty of nothing derails and a pause button. We're going to see how that goes. For those wanting to follow along, I'll mention it later as well. But there is a link in the description of the video that has an Excel spreadsheet of the timetable. So you can download that and take a look at that. And once we get to the ops, you'll have that as a frame of reference. I'm seeing reports that the video's kind of buggy. So since it's not showing you consistently, Dave, I'm just gonna say we'll go videoless if you want to discontinue a video on your part.
Yeah, that's fine. I can certainly I'll take it over to just the holder picture, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
maybe we can try and log in a little bit later and see what's going on.
And then I'm just gonna hide that window, and hopefully that makes it a little less buggy. I think some of it is just the nature of it being that I'm talking to you while we also have this going on. But hopefully cutting out the video makes it a little bit smoother. Let you guys in the comments let me know if it improves or if it's still laggy, and I'll see what we can do on that front. So with that said, we'll kind of go left to right, which is to say, if you were to be walking into your basement, and we'll just follow the pathway of what that leads us. So our first stop on the Onondaga Cutoff is actually the part of the layout that's not Conrail.
Yes, the Manoa and Euclid, which, as you can see at the left of the screen here, I think what you're seeing one way or the other is the Onondaga Yard is down to the right. And it sounds like we're sponsored by Broadway Limited, and that's where the Broadway Limited symbol is there over on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm excited about some Broadway stuff coming up, especially some of their business car offerings. So there's definitely some exciting stuff coming one way or the other from there. But to the left, we've got the whole Euclid Yard. You can see the Dolger Brewing Company there at the end of the layout, which is the primary anchor business on that end of the Manoa and Euclid. And Manoa and Euclid is owned, much like Maine Eastern, by the Morristown and Erie, which is based here in New Jersey, and in the 1990s started to branch out a little bit to a couple of different satellite operations around the Northeast. So I use that idea to allow me to continue to use my Morristown and Erie models, which I painstakingly built in high school, and which tells you how old I am. It's been a while, but those Alcos hold down the assignment on the Manoa and Euclid. They're based at the Blue Engine House there in the distance. And there's two different jobs there, one in the morning and one in the evening. And it works out pretty well. But I just got it, Nick, I got to give you credit. It is so cool to see what you're doing with this. This is part of the hobby that I really haven't been that exposed to. And it's so cool. I see Matt Betzner and Matt Harris checking in. Again, as you mentioned, the Millennial Modeler, hello. It's a neat new crowd, and it's a lot of fun to see some familiar names here as well. But you can see some box cars spotted there at the Dolger Brewing Company and some barley cars as well. So they'll take barley loads in, and finished beer comes out. The packaging also comes in box cars, and so for a small industry, there's quite a bit of switching that goes on over there. And you add that to Central Plastics in the distance, and you've actually got a fairly busy little job off the railroad, which is a lot of fun.
So yeah, so looking at Central Plastics now, and then we go along the line, which in real life is I didn't realize there's a tunnel under your staircase, but we get to have the full thing here in our digital realm because the only limit is how many pixels we can fit on the screen at any given time. And then your the crossing of the river. This is where the scenery picks up. And then we have one other. Oh, go ahead. And then we've got the one other industry here on the line.
Yeah, that's the Central Plastics there next to the engine house. So the crew will start and stop there at the office in the engine house, which on the layout is a Rick's product engine house, and looks actually doesn't look that dissimilar from what you've got there in trains, which is awesome. We head up the hill and through the non-existent in prototype, but quite existent in my basement tunnel. Fitting a model railroad in an 1840s basement has been an adventure. I see Ralph Heiss here on the chat, and Ralph is one of my regular operators, and has been an indispensable part of bringing this sort of to the prototype feel. But we head up the hill, we cross Skinny Atlas Creek on the trestle bridge, and it's a facing point switch as we're going up the hill here, as I see on the feed. But that's Crucible Chemical there in the background, and that industry is just, you know, the point of a short line is to serve a couple industries, and usually there's an anchor tenant. And that's exactly what we have here on the Manoa and Euclid.
Then we come down this very tight, very steep curve to where we officially join the Conrail mainline here at CP 282.
Yes. Yep. And basically, crossing, a question of fitting in as much of the short line as we could. I think interchange is one of the most interesting parts of model railroading because it allows different crews from different railroads to work together. Also allows for people to have different assignments when they come to an operating session. So it's just everybody wins with interchange. But you head down to CP 282, and this is kind of the nerve center, the operational nerve center of the OC. It's a very busy interlocking, not just a universal on the Chicago line, but also a full interchange both with the Manoa and Euclid and the access to the west end of Onondaga Yard.
Well, let's take a look at the yard proper. So here we are coming in with one customer on the left, and then we've got the full yard here.
Correct. And basically, we're coming in right at the west end of the yard. On the north side of the main line is Niagara Propane, and Niagara is it's just basically a model of a local propane distributorship. So generally, it gets a propane tank car every 24 to 36 hours, and it's an ongoing part of the operation. But it's just a good spot to have put a propane place to work, and adds to the challenge for operating crews that are coming out of the yard and that'll be working out at the west end there when they're in and out of an interlocking trying to work the propane distributorship. And part of that brings up an interesting discussion. I think part of what we try and do is bring in centralized traffic control, CTC operating rules to a model railroad operating environment. And when I first became a model railroader, I see Rudy Garbely. Good evening.
Hey,
Fun
Rudy.
to see some familiar faces. Yep. And the Sleepy K4, you're correct. This would all have been former, Conrail predecessor trackage. The M&E is modeled off the Lackawanna trackage, which comes up from Binghamton, and the OC itself is modeled off the New York Central Chicago line trackage. All of it ended up with Conrail, and then Conrail would have spun off to the Manoa and Euclid, Morristown and Erie, and then would have maintained the mainline route as we're talking about here. But yeah, so the screen you're seeing here is Onondaga Yard, sum total, and that's the operational center of the whole railroad. Where CP 282 to the left is the west end of that yard facility. CP 280 280 to the right is likewise the east end of Onondaga Yard, and almost as busy as 282. But that M&E interchange definitely opens up the possibilities for operations on the west end. And so the goal of the whole thing is this high density, scheduled, high priority, trunk line. I mean, they moved, there was, even in 1994, it's probably 48, 50, 52 scheduled trains a day. And then you add that locals, you add Amtrak, you add extra trains like coal or grain, oil, and you quickly end up at 60, 70 trains a day, which is just a busy, busy main line. A lot of fun to watch trains there.
And then we'll probably talk more about the design of the yard once we get into doing some of the switching with it. But you have these tracks categorized into essentially two groups. You've got the field in the foreground and park in the background.
Correct. And Field and Park, I have to admit, even though I'm a New York Central, Chicago line, Conrail Chicago line guy, Park and Field were a tribute to my friend Alex Lang and our time watching trains in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is much closer to my house here in New Jersey. So Allentown
Hmm.
Yard had a field yard and a park yard, and they were labeled similarly, and those names are a tribute to that train watching experience. But also, it helps. On a prototype, it helps operations when every track is named. So you don't point and say, oh, set off those cars at this track or that track. No, you set it off at number 2 in the park, and you pick up for number 3 in the field, and then you back onto the East Lee for your outbounds. And if you listen to railroad prototypes, if you listen to a scanner or an online feed, if you're out watching trains, or if you're watching, all of these great video webcams today that are available, different spots around the country, all of this stuff, you're going to hear railroaders using the proper name for certain tracks. And I think that's a really, really important aspect to model railroading and to operations. So the Sleepy K4, you're a middle school student. Well, whether it doesn't matter where you are in the hobby or how old you are, what's awesome about modeling railroading is that you can drive an entirely prototypical experience, either with physical models like I do here on the OC, or with digital models like Nick's doing here on this chat and with his Great Layouts podcast. So it's really a neat adaptation of what we're talking about when it comes to prototype modeling.
And there's so many directions you can go with it. I think what I encourage you who are following along to see is obviously this is quite the basement empire. Although I'll admit that when I started building, I'm like, it seemed even bigger from reading the articles, but it's still fairly big for a lot of us who are new to the hobby. So I encourage you, as you're watching this, to think, well, what are pieces of this that I could take that might fit into my smaller space or into my design goals or into the era I'm modeling.
Nick, that's a great point. And I think, one of the things to remember is, I've been modeling trains since I was 7 or 8 years old. And my first railroad was a 4x8 sheet of plywood in a basement. It was that old, even older home than I live in now, which is hard to believe. But it had a coal stove, and the coal stove allowed basically nice consistent heat for the house, but also created a tremendous amount of dust that was over all of my model railroad stuff in the basement. And so ironically, I had a basement that was covered with coal dust all the time. It was,
Mm.
except that I modeled diesels. So anyway, long story short, you start with a 4x8, you start with something small, and there's lots of elements. As the widely renowned author Tony Custer has coined, that layout design elements are an important part of what we do, and it's how you get started. One interlocking, one small yard, one mainline industry. There's different ways to design pieces of a railroad, and you can get started on that right away.
And here are some elements that could definitely be that one could model in a smaller space on their own. We've got the industrial spur in the foreground and some industries in the background that are worth talking about.
Yes, so now we've headed east from Onondaga Yard. The Woodchuck Hill Road Bridge there is a through truss bridge that goes over the main line, which is basically modeled with the idea of Bridge Street at DeWitt Yard, the west end of DeWitt Yard. It's the same sort of idea where you have a through truss bridge for vehicles over a multiple track main line and a couple of yard tracks. But What also happens over at CP280, if you look behind the engine house, we have a secondary track that ducks off from the yard trackage itself. It actually comes off the north runner of Onondaga Yard, which is the track all the way against the backdrop. And it drops down a steep grade. And it was funny when Nick and I were working on his design for this railroad, the clearance beneath the main line there at that bridge became a popular topic of discussion because you have to drop down basically a 4% grade, a very steep grade, to go underneath that bridge, which you can see right there in the feed. And there's only a few inches of clearance. So, there's no double stack cars or auto rack cars or high cube box cars. There's actually in the paperwork for the model railroad, you actually have a equipment restriction, a height restriction to only plate C cars that can come down that hill, because that's the only way you can squeeze underneath those bridges. So you duck down underneath, you pop out underneath that main line, right where we're looking right now. And different switch crews do different ways. Some guys will come down cars first with the locomotive trailing. Other guys will have the locomotive coming down first with the cars behind the locomotive. But in either case, Empire Recycling is a scrap dealership. Not really a dealership. It's basically a recycling yard that both receives and ships scrap metal by rail. And any prototype scrap yard is the same way. They basically buy and sell based on the price of scrap given, a daily trading price. So that's one industry. And then if you continue down the secondary track in the foreground there's a runaround track that leads you down towards Blue Circle Cement, which is a fairly substantial transload operation where cement loads come in from cement mills, through the Northeast, and they put it in a little elevator there, and then they can load local trucks and cement mixers that go out from there to lay concrete in different places around the area. And it's fun with a prototype freelance layout like this to be able to weave in as much prototype as you can. And one of the things that I think is important to try and lend local flavor is to copy some of the local industries. So Empire Recycling was an actual customer on Conrail, and Blue Circle Cement was an actual customer on Conrail as well. So weaving those cars into the mix, I think, adds a lot for crews.
And gives you kind of a way of making use of the fact that in the background is just mainline. So crews aren't needing to reach there necessarily. And where crews do need to access these Fayetteville industries, they could just come around the corner here to do that work. So it's a good way of being able to have a deeper scene while still being able to reach everything as needed.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of the ergonomics of the whole thing. And it's actually another interesting conversation for younger modelers, people that are just getting into the hobby, is that, we all have grand plans of a layout that is huge and that models a huge area. Even those of us that love short lines are trying to put in, scenes into our railroad that allow us to recreate some of that excitement and passion. Yeah, even from your first railroad, think about how you're going to be able to reach stuff. So if you look right here, you can see in the scene on the live here, you've got Blue Circle Cement to the left, which is down at the bottom of the hill on the Casanova industrial track. And I put a notch into the benchwork. So, Nick's done a nice job showing that little notch here. And what that allows you to do is physically walk in on the OC to access those two manual switches there that get into both. That's BPA equipment on the far side. It's a farm dealership that gets loads of chicken feed and bird seed and repackages them, and occasional equipment loads as well on flat cars. And then in the foreground on track 2, that is Camillus Lumber with its Fayetteville location. Camillus Lumber is all over central New York, and being able to weave that name in, I think, also helps to locate, where we are on this model railroad. So they bring in lumber loads and then again transload it to local developers, local businesses, and flatbed trucks as needed for regional distribution. And you're sort of right in downtown Fayetteville there. So that the double track mainline trains are cruising back and forth through it. And you've got the local has to come out and work those industries. So part of the challenge for both locals, through freights, and the dispatcher is to be able to weave in these high priority trains, Amtrak, UPS piggyback trains, double stack trains, auto rack trains, around the locals and around the manifest trains that work on the Onondaga Yard.
It's a lot going on. Now we get to the perhaps the calmer section in the sense that there's no switches here, so trains are just running through. We've got Fayetteville proper here.
Yep. And upstate New York, they say Fayetteville,
Ah,
like Lafayette, like the
yep.
the French name. But there you go. And this is still seen as sort of under development on the OC, so it's kind of cool to see it under development also on your railroad. The black space to the left is going to be a passenger station for Amtrak, only on track 2. So that'll be right there. Yep, down in the foreground there. You can see you've got it in there, and mine will be, it just a local regional passenger station where Amtrak will make a pit stop like they do across central New York in a couple different places. But Fayetteville basically comes down and across to the right there, a big sweeping curve through town. And I'm excited to finish it because it's going to be fun to model the backside of a bunch of little downtown buildings. It's really a neat spot for just to watch trains, to sit and watch trains come by. So it's a cool part of the railroad. We're just open running, and when you're modeling a main line, Union Pacific or SP or Conrail or BNSF or NS or CSX, no matter what you do with switching, there's almost always big swatches of track between the locations where the trains are just running. And I think it's important to be able to jump in and allow yourself a little bit of open running when you're putting your model railroad together. Oh, there's our Erie Canal Park. Nice.
Yeah, and we could talk about this with the park here. Even on a smaller layout, like even if all you have to work with is 4x8, I'm a proponent of having at least one scene where there isn't anything going on as far as complex track work or switch work if you can afford it, because it's nice to have, especially if you're doing something that where you can run your train in loops, one scene where you're just taking it in and it feels like that in between, that gives you a kind of a visual and mental break from your yards, your engine terminals, or whatever it is that's being worked. Hello, Dave. You still there?
Oh, yep. Oh, sorry.
Okay, just
All right.
making.
Very, very good. No, that was actually my fault. I bumped the mute button somehow. I just noticed that when you said, "Am I still here?" The answer is yes.
Good thing
At
to
least to
check.
some degree.
I wasn't sure if it was my internet or not, but glad we still have you here. So yeah, so this Erie Canal scene, I love from the standpoint that that is so central New York.
It's very much central New York, and I think having a through scene like this where the trains just roll, even for people just starting out with a 4x sheet of plywood in a spare room or the attic or the basement, even for people that are doing a shelf layout, and there's nothing wrong with getting started with a shelf layout. That's a great way to get into model railroading, actually building something. When you have that kind of a scene, if the whole thing is switching trackage, that's fine. There's lots of places to spot cars, and that's cool. But if your prototype is anything besides an industrial district, it's really important to have cars going from someplace to someplace else. Giving your modeling a mission, it makes it much more interesting, I think, over time, and pushes your brain to develop concepts that help deliver more satisfaction over the course of the hobby. All of a sudden you're buying, you built a lumber yard. So now you don't just like center beams, you might actually quote unquote need a center beam flat car, depending on your era. Or you might need a cement car if you have a cement plant. So weaving in some of these industries and the fact that cars come from someplace off your railroad onto your railroad to be delivered, that concept I think adds a lot. But the other real positive aspect is you look at where you're modeling. If you're in the desert, having a drainage ditch and a culvert below your grade is really helps people believe that you're modeling the desert. And if you're modeling central New York, having a canal scene really does tie in the whole central New York atmosphere. Absolutely.
Now this is a scene I had to go I had to get the details in here because I feel like this is the scene. I mean, it's either this or CP282 are the key Onondaga Cutoff scenes. Um,
And yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I really think that there's opportunity on any model railroad to develop really key scenes, but there's no question about it. And what's excited about what for me about the canal scene is that there's some of that still yet to come in real life. So I'm excited to be documenting that process. There'll certainly be some articles you guys see down the road here about how you put together a scene like that and how you can model some of the key features. You know, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about the Erie Canal is that it's a National Historic Site. It's got all sorts of neat signage and official paths and benches and things. Those are all things that we can model and help to really drive home the point that the Onondaga Cutoff is located in central New York.
so here we are going down the line. Our next control point, CP277, with the railfan car parked, ready to snap pictures of the blue in action.
I think it's great. I think it's great. And I really wanted to include a working automated grade crossing in real life here on the OC because, I mean, how many of us, that's some of our first exposure to trains, to the prototype. I mean, so many people today, that's the primary spot you go to watch trains is you go sit at the local grade crossing and see what happens. And the idea of the automated lights and gates and the bells, the horns blowing and fans there at the crossing, I think adds a whole lot. It's a lot of fun to see.
And since it is the one crossing on the layout, on the main line, I should say, it gives your crews that excuse that they're looking for to use the horn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that adds to the whole discussion of sound in the hobby, which I think has added a whole lot. I think, you know, being able to blow the horn and do your thing is a lot of fun.
Our final scenic piece of the layout here is Iroquois Paper, which is the largest customer on the layout. Would you say, as far as the amount of cars going in and out?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's the one spot on the railroad that demands its own local job. It basically allows a crew to keep busy for the daylight hours, as well as a couple different jobs actually that work around the clock to make sure that the mill is switched properly. So for the industrial switching fans, that's the spot where I think it really comes together. Both railroads actually switch that. Manoa and Euclid goes over there on trackage rights and does their thing. And the local switch, they actually have the contract like Morristown and Erie did for many years at Bayway at the refinery here in New Jersey. The mill owns the trackage and they contract out the operator as they see fit. So Manoa and Euclid actually staffs that daytime job to switch those all the tracks at Iroquois, and Conrail picks up and drops off to help keep them supplied. So it's a neat spot. It's a lot of fun to see it working out.
So that is our scenic portion of the layout. Now, in real life, this is a double decker. What I'm going to show you is technically the bottom deck, but as you know, if you're familiar with trains with a Z, double decker layouts are kind of near to impossible to recreate properly in this sim. So we've given it in its entirely separate room here. And as you can see, we've filled up the staging a fair amount. So what are we looking at here, kind of in a nutshell?
Basically, for any operating model railroad, it's a game of illusion. You're building an illusion of the prototype, and the goal is to have a visitor or an operator be able to lose themselves in the game. It's very much a role-playing game in operations that takes you into and out of the whole experience, where you can immerse yourself in railroading, in a scale version of railroading for a couple hours, and to make that operation come to life. And so what's important is to have, like if you go to a good play, and it could be at your middle school, it could be at your high school, it could be at college, it could be at Broadway in New York City or any one of the major cities around the world. If you go to a great theatric production, You start off with one scene and you move to the next and the next, but the players are coming on and off from the sides. They're coming from off stage, on stage where they do their part, and then they go off stage. Maybe they have a change of costume, maybe they have a change of role. They come back on stage and they keep being part of this ongoing information, this ongoing idea of the production. And what you're seeing here in the staging yards, and whether it's on the lower level, right, or whether it's on the upper level, which is sort of the more visible part of the railroad, it's part of the experience. And so the staging railroad you see here, which is modeled in a separate room, just because of the way that we're, again, I think that's what the software makes most possible for you. Those trains are off stage like the actors in a play, and they're going to come on stage to play their role. They'll play their role out, whether it's a high-speed intermodal or Amtrak train, whether it's a passenger train that stops at Fayetteville or not. Maybe it's a local that comes on and goes back off, or maybe it's a train that comes up, drops cars in Onondaga Yard, and then keeps going. The goal is to capture some of that, the rest of the world atmosphere, and it's a popular concept in model railroad operations to have a staging yard where trains are staged to come back to reality and then they go back off again. So what you're seeing there is what you'll see during the session. And the point is not to look necessarily in staging, but to be excited about what you're going to see when those offstage characters do come on stage to play their role.
And so, just to kind of relate this to what we've looked at, you can kind of envision how this is the lower level to the upper level of what we've just seen. We have this line that's curving around. So this is coming from CP 282. So where the M&E meets the main line, this is that line coming down to staging. And then this black hole over here, that is on the left, between the two black holes that you see. That left black hole is coming from Iroquois paper, which we just looked at. So we have, and I labeled it here just because it would help me to think as well as you guys to see. These are our eastbound departures, and these are our westbound departures.
Correct. And one of the real benefits of having a balloon-shaped staging yard like this, which we have on the OC, is that train sets can essentially be turned in the other direction. So I could take engines off of one end, run them out over to the island yard, which is halfway up that straightaway against the distance there, cross them back over, and they come back into the other side of the staging yard. And now that same train can run the other direction to represent a different consist and a different train. So, I mean, ideally, I would have, if there's 50 trains a day, I would have 25 sets, one for each direction, twice. But that's just not a feasible thing. The cost adds up, the space adds up. The important thing to remember as a modeler is that you can represent some of that with using a lot less sets of equipment as long as you're a little bit creative. And that was the genesis of the double-ended staging yard.
So now that we've had the chance to look at everything as it exists, I think now is a great time to start playing with some trains.
Let's jump in. I'm excited.
So this is the part of the show, if you didn't catch already, if you look in the description of this YouTube video, you'll see an download for an Excel spreadsheet. That is what we're going to be talking about tonight, and I encourage you to download it and take a look at it, because we're going to be referencing things that are on that sheet. It's got a multitude of tabs with a lot of information. We're largely going to be focusing on the trains that are moving on the first tab. But Dave kindly sent this along, A, for your guidance, and B, to help me stage this whole session, because I'll be honest, I saw the ops that you have going on, Dave. It was kind of like, how do I even set this up and make it seem
Sure.
like it's been running for years, which I think is a challenge with a lot of with a lot of layouts, and only true the larger you go is how you how you make it seem like a real railroad, and everything's been working for a while and not just like it's day one of the railroad.
Yeah, and I think that that's all part of the illusion, as we talked about before. The goal is to develop a group of people that are excited about your vision for your prototype and draw operations to the forefront where everybody can role play and experience some of that wonderful camaraderie, that wonderful togetherness that we all look for. I mean, whether it's on a sports team, basketball or soccer or football, whether it's watching a football game with other fans that are all excited about it, or a soccer game, whether it's rail fanning together, or maybe it's just it's a travel buddy, or you're going out to a restaurant with a group of people. There's When people come together, there's tremendous possibility, and I think operations is a way to manifest that kind of energy for a group of people that love trains. And so that's the goal. And creating an operation that fits the railroad you have is not only feasible, it's a lot of fun. And the more people you bring in that understand trains, or that have a passion for transportation and how things move, the better off you are to create something that can be really special for that group of people. So I think that's sort of the goal of the OC, is to be able to draw that together and make it happen in real time.
Right. So we are going to do this in real time. I was going to try to set up the fast clock, but I think that's going to be more confusion on my end than I want to subject myself to at the moment. So we're going to be kind of a little loose with the departure time. So if you're looking at that Excel sheet, we're going to be starting on the first tab. You'll see our first train is SEEL, and that's what we're going to be starting off with. If you look at the schedule full tab on that Excel sheet, SEAL is scheduled for a 1:40 a.m. departure. And so that's what we're going to be grabbing first. You'll notice as well, you look at this staging, you go, well, where the heck is my train? And honestly, I'm having to remind myself of where the heck that train is. But thanks to this handy sheet, I could see, okay, it is on track 2, and we know that it's a westbound. So it is going to be this train right here, led by 5060. So
Very cool. A B40-8. Me and my buddy Jack, growing up in the 80s, all these -7s and -8s came out, but the only time we actually said the dash was when we were, talking about a -7 or -8 generally. We would just call it a B36-7 or a B48, which of course is very confusing. So I think, again, it's being able to laugh with this, and W2 Fan 5 made a comment there. It is right there. Like, laughing through some of this stuff, sharing time with other people that love what you love is so special. Yep, and that's right, Maddie. It's Selkirk, New York to Elkhart, Indiana. So Conrail's symbols for manifest freights like this were basically the 2 letters of the origin yard and the 2 letters of the destination. So SEEL is a Selkirk, New York, around Albany, New York, to Elkhart, Indiana train, largely loaded with cars, empties headed back west to get refilled. And, one way or the other, it rated all sorts of modern power. Yep, it could be all 4-axle GEs every once in a blue moon, right, Matt? And here we are, and that's exciting. It's a lot of fun to watch Conrail locomotives from this era work together and come on up the hill. And you can already see some of the cars in the train here, which are exciting. You've got some box cars, you've got some grain hoppers, some flat cars, empties headed west. Most of the grain is going to be empty headed west as well. And there's also going to be other cars that are put together that you can drop off in the yard, and then you'll pick up other cars to head west as well. So that whole coordination is part of it's part of a larger plan. And that larger plan, it seems complicated when you're first looking at it, but I can tell you that once you start to run trains on your railroad, you start to see what kind of cars go where, and you can start to build the kind of consistency that it takes to be able to develop an actual scheme for your railroad.
So here the train is emerging from the staging. So to give a little peek behind the curtain, to get the orientation right, I had to add in an extra half loop and an extra leg of the climb so that it was oriented the correct way for coming out of the staging here. So we are now in the scenic portion. So this is mostly a point to point, except it is going to have a block of cars that it's cutting off the front end, then a block of cars it's collecting from Onondaga Yard.
Correct. Yeah, and the way that works, one way or the other, is that some days it's a bigger block and some days it's a smaller one. But the idea, one way or the other, is that you're going to be spending time at the yard, putting things together, and working around other crews that are doing the same thing. So that's sort of part of the fun of it, as far as I'm concerned, is to be able to be part of that larger dance, that larger coordination. But every train like this, a westbound train, is climbing the hill, so he's passing Iroquois paper, and while he's passing Iroquois, there's a switch crew at work over at Iroquois doing what they're doing, whether they're spotting cars or setting things for outbounds. And we're coming up here, crossing over so that we can work the yard. We're going to cross the grade crossing at High Bridge Road. No, awesome. B36-7, B40-8, B36-7. Nice consist, Nick. Good choice.
Thank you. It's your choice, though. To be clear,
I love it.
I based, because I am such a not forgetting all the details right, I made sure to base the consist off of the power that you listed in that spreadsheet. That is something that I try to pride myself on. Do you have a track speed for this? I mean, I recognize in HO, like, speed is sort of a hard thing to calculate, but in your mind, is there a track speed for these lines?
Yeah, we base it off the Chicago line. So freight trains are 50 miles an hour. And passenger trains, believe it or not, on my little railroad are 79 miles an hour.
Wow.
So you feel free to cook. That's the that's the plan.
Okay, so speaking of the plan, we're coming into Onondaga. How would you recommend I handle where to put this block of cars I'm bringing in, and then this block that I'm collecting here?
Now, are you leaving anything on the main line, or are you taking everything in?
I'm probably going to take things in because I don't know what sequence I'm going to work this yet.
Yeah, so normally this train has a pickup and a set out. So what they'll do is they'll come in, they'll make a set out on the south runner, and then they have to come back to their train on the main line with the pickup. So they could put their set out. Really, you find an open track to make your set out, and if it's not the south runner, it could be anywhere in the field yard. Then you can use another open track to come back to the east lead and make your pickup.
All right, so then I'm going to set myself for the south runner here then. Should I put the whole train there or just the block of cars that I'm cutting off?
Normally, all you take in is what you're cutting off. Everything else you leave on the main line.
Okay.
And you'll bring the pickup back to what's on the main line and put your train back together and then head out to the other end of the railroad.
So in this case, Selkirk was kind to us, / I was kind to myself, and it's the first 10 cars that are going going to be put on the south runner, and then we'll grab these cars off of here, and they're gonna go continue to go west with us.
Yeah, so I would, basically you can whatever you're going to leave on the main line, you want to leave enough space to bring your set out back out. So you could leave those cars back at the grade crossing behind. You can leave them where you stand, or we can work it out. However it comes together is this is sort of
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's fun is that different crews do it different ways, and you follow the rules and you make it work.
Okay, well, since I'm here anyway, I'll just, in hindsight, I would have left them further back, but we could just shove to a clear a little bit later once we get to that part of the show. So, obviously, I'm a little bit limited into how much I could do solo-handedly. If I wanted to go crazy, I could tell the AI, go to this waypoint, do that. But I kind of feel like, that'd be hard to keep track of because the AI in this game is not always the most intelligent. But I also think that there's so much that goes on. Like when I watch the videos from your sessions, that in a way, maybe it's good from kind of breaking this down piece by piece. So you mentioned earlier that while we are doing our thing here with SEEL, you'd have a switch crew over at Iroquois. Would there be anything else going on at this point in time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, SEEL is actually, we actually on the OC will actually do a full lighting scenario where overnight the lights go down and it's actually pitch black when you're doing a bunch of your work with SEEL because it's an early morning start, and it's actually kind of fun. You model railroading at night, which is part of the experience. And so what'll happen is that there's other trains running at that same time. There's TV6, there's TV5, TV80, TV200, bunch of important intermodal trains on their way to a dawn destination, one end of the railroad or the other. Those will be zooming by on the main line while this is all going on. You'll also have a yard job in Onondaga at night, classifying cars ahead of time. So it's a constant rotation. It's a lot of fun.
So,
oh, there you go.
Yes.
All right.
Trains' night lighting, is it great? But we'll do a little bit of it just to get a bit of a taste of it. So as far as running around my power, is this something that I would do on the main or do on an empty yard track?
It's much easier with an empty yard track. There's different ways you can do it, and really it's up to the yard master. So there's on the OC, there's 3 jobs that are sort of constant jobs for management, and one of those is the dispatcher. One of those is a yard master on Onondaga Yard, and the third one is a train master who handles the crews. I love the headlight on the signal bridge. That's actually super prototypical. That's really, really cool. So where you are right now, we can stop and drop your cars because you're pretty much on the South Runner. Mm-hmm. And then the light power can throw the switch there at the West End crossover, and any way back over to the East Lead, which is where the pickup is. That power would just, basically the engineer stays on the head end, the conductor then would climb to the last unit and would ride that last unit and use a radio to communicate with the locomotive engineer to guide the light power back to the pickup.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I can see why
you can go back North Runner. You can go North Runner. You can go through the park or the field, whatever is an open yard track.
Park's open, so we'll take that. The North Runner actually has some power sitting on it at the moment, so we'll go that way, and then we're in position to be able to grab our cut off the East Runner here and tack that on and get underway. Thank you for the super chat, Millennial Modeler. To Conrail, yes, here. And Double Tube Fan 5, let there be a lack of light. Yes, that is what we get to celebrate here.
Hey, railroading is 24/7, you guys, and being able to replicate that has been a lot of fun on the OC.
Yes, and Trainsy does have the ability, if you set it up in a particular way in advance, you can actually run a fast clock on it. So it will do a day-night cycle of things. Again, Trains' night lighting varies in quality. I believe Matthew Betzner, cool, who says...
This is... Oh, yeah. Matt made time to come down to an OC session, and really, it was a lot of fun to host. And Matt's been a big fan for a while. And Matt, we'll see you in Springfield again.
Yes, look forward to seeing you in Springfield, Matt, and you, Dave, and anybody else who will be joining us. Look forward to seeing you there.
Oh, it's such a great weekend. It's worth it.
So what would you say the average amount of trains running at a signal time is in a session?
I would say if you count the power moves at both ends of staging, you're probably talking about between 5 and 7 crews at the same time at any given time.
Wow, that is impressive. And would there be something going on the M&E as well at this point?
By this point of the night, M&E is pretty much tied down. They pretty much have a daytime job. ME2 goes on around 3 in the afternoon, comes over to Onondaga, does their work. and then heads back home. They do work Crucible overnight, but that's only a quick spot, as we saw earlier in the video. And so when they get back down to Euclid, they pretty much drop their train in the yard, take the power to the house, and sign off around midnight, give or take. So it basically it's fairly quiet for them overnight over on that side of the railroad. But here we've made our pickup now, and so what we're going to do. So you're going to go back out through the park yard, Nick. At this point, is that how you lined out?
Um, well, I have to tack back onto the train on the
Yeah.
main, so I was just gonna shove all the way on the main and then take it.
Yep, you could do that. The other thing you can do is go through the yard and go out, basically depart through the yard track. And sometimes that'll happen for these overnight jobs because there's no caboose. So rather than have the conductor walk all the way to the rear end of the whole train, they can do the brake test remotely, and then they can get on the move through the park yard. So that's an opportunity as well.
Okay, then we'll just set it up that way. While we're doing that, I believe the next train on the schedule is just a straight point-to-point shot. That I can have the AI do, and then we get to have the fun of having something come by us here. So if we go to our handy-dandy schedule, we'll see that next up we've got TOMT, which is a auto parts train here.
Yep, from Toledo, Ohio to Metuchen, New Jersey.
And so I'm going to make sure that we cross that over for correct running here. In this case, I should just be able to tell it to drive, and it shouldn't do anything stupid. And we'll see how that goes. I'm going to double check my switches as we come out of here, though.
Oh, that's the famous last words. That's
yes.
we do that all the time. Yep.
So, fortunately it shows my signals ahead, and they're all showing as clear. So okay, yep, we're good. So we will let it do its thing, and we also know from this cheat sheet that it's going to end up at, if I'm looking at this correctly, Dave, you can confirm, it's going to end up back on track 1 when it gets back into staging?
Correct.
Okay, so then I'm going to make sure that I have staging set to 1 on the west side, which I do because that's where we just came out of with our with the SEEL. So, speaking of which, we can now get back together. Yep, we can now put our train back together. And soon we'll have that auto parts train passing us on the main, which will be kind of cool. Give us a little bit of that illusion of, fully functioning railroad.
Absolutely. Yes.
We're doing this kind of as opposed to, so you'll see from the spreadsheet that there are specific call times, but we're doing this more like a kind of a domino effect of, oh, okay, we'll send that train now. Good enough, close enough.
And I think, again, this is a fun thing to be part of, sort of in real time for the first time like this, and it shows the possibilities that this is another aspect of the hobby that especially younger people are embracing, and that's exciting for everybody involved. It really is.
And so, okay, we've got our train back together now, and so we can pull through the yard and make sure that our switches are set on the other side of the yard. Meanwhile, we'd also be getting, presumably, so would we have to be getting further clearance from the dispatch to be, oh, oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Clearance from the dispatcher to go further west, or do we already have that block?
So permission to move about in the yard is actually, you need permission from the dispatcher to reverse in the interlocking there at CP280. To go from CP280 via the yard to 282, you would actually talk to the Conrail Onondaga yard master. Yard master is the one that determines what tracks are used for what in the yard and coordinates movements around that. Then once you get out to the west end of the yard at CP282, to continue further west, now you're back into an interlocking and onto the main line. That's the dispatcher's territory. So it's actually a coordination between all those different managers to make sure that happens.
That is an impressive show. And that's what I love about op settings, or op sessions. We'll have a nice track side view here as we're pulling through the yard. There we go. That's something kind of nighttime classy. Is just that teamwork, that sense of like all these different roles, and the big picture of what's going on. And you really get that with some of these larger layouts where you can enjoy the operating session potential of it. I'm pretty happy with that framing there. We got the signal in the back. Dave, did I lose you again?
No, I'm sitting here in awe of what you're putting. This is just fantastic.
Oh, good. Oh, good. We'll take all. We'll take it.
I mean, the signal in the background and the way the headlights glinted off those cars. He'd have his bell ringing, passing a set of standing cars, and creeping, crawling.
Oh, here we are. Here's our meet.
Awesome. It's just great.
That's
wow.
I
mean, and that's part of the magic. I mean, that is right spot on. That's the sort of thing that we regularly see on the Onondaga Cutoff as these kind of meets. That is as God intended, as they say.
Mm-hmm. That's
awesome.
Satisfied. Yeah, and the beauty with trades is that if you so I should mention, because I don't think I've mentioned it yet. If you like this route and you want to download it and you have Train Z, it is available on greattrainlayouts.com now. So you could go over there and download it. It is a work in progress. There might be a couple of scenery bits that aren't complete. There might be a couple of issues I've already found that I'll need to fix at some point. But you can get a taste of what we're doing tonight and see how many trains you can run at a single time. And you'll have the paperwork to run it too.
Well, Nick, I mean, that's the fun of this, is being able to share it like this, which is super, super cool. And I love that we were able to do a meet already. That's a big part of the drama on the OC. So well done.
Thank you. All right. And so with that, we've got our first two trains underway. Well, one is almost back at staging, so I'm going to make sure oh no, I already checked that I lined it there. So we could get a third train going. That third train is going to be TV6. I'm going to switch it to daytime also, just because this is cool.
Yeah, very good.
You will see things more clearly in the day, and the lighting's a little bit more accurate.
Oh, for sure. No, and we, everybody got a flavor there of the night, which is the most important part, is being able to know that it can happen that way. That's all.
So here we are back in the day. So our TV6, we know from our spreadsheet, it's on 3W. It's an eastbound, and it is with 6482 is the lead unit. So that is this train right here.
TV6 with its an SD40-2 liter, very typical.
Yep. So I'm going to make sure that we're all set switch-wise. This one, because it's another point-to-point, I'm going to trust the AI to not take us to places too far and wide, and we'll let it. We'll let the AI handle this one. So now we have 3 trains moving simultaneously, of which I am in control of the SEEL, which is going to be coming back in here in a moment.
Yep. Now TV6 will be heading straight to, it runs the railroad, but it lands on 5E. So you can route him all the way over around TOMT to get to 5E. And if he has to wait someplace, then he has to wait someplace. That's also part of the fun. But this is cool. This is an SD40-2,
Yep.
C39-8, and it looks like maybe a pair of 39s.
Yep, pair of 39s.
Yep, and that's 100% looking like a TV6. That's awesome.
Excellent. I'm glad I'm getting the seal of approval from the Conrail folks. That is, and I also have to shout out, thank you, Spacing Out with Ginger, for the super chat. Fun fact: GE locos are just better Alcos. Yeah, I mean, especially something like the Dash 8s in particular. They do have an Alco spirit to them.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. Yep.
So you can't see it in real life view where we've got this fictional piece of the track that's looping us for orientation purposes in the foreground with the seal. Yeah, we'll speed that up a little bit. It doesn't have to be going quite that slow. Once we get this back in the yard, we'll take our next train out, which is another manifest with, I think it, yes, the SEIN, which does have, I think it has a pickup, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, SEIN will have a pickup at the yard. Actually,
Wait.
I think on this one, actually, SEIN is just a through train.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It becomes
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Later
right.
later on, he'll be something else.
Okay, and here we go. All three of our trains in one place at one time. But in a way that's not too chaotic. Okay, so I need to make sure I've got that is the TOMT. They are going into one, and I think I've already, no, I haven't routed them to one. Oh, I screwed up. They're on the wrong line. They're on two. And I can't get them over to one.
Yeah, we'll make it work. This happens in real sessions too.
Okay, well, we'll put it on two for the moment.
Yeah.
Because I don't think two's open. Okay.
Let's just see. As long as we can fit behind the train that's at the other end, we should be in good shape.
Alrighty. And then I need to be putting this guy on. Seal's supposed to go on two. And I butchered that by putting him on. Wait, he can't go on two yet because I've got two blocked by that. Oh.
Right. But can he get in behind the other one?
He could go on. He really needs to go on five. So this is the part where I go oopsie doopsie, and I shove back through the control point to get him where he needs to go.
I have to. It's rare, but it has happened.
Well, see, you're you're there to oversee these boo boos and help to ensure that they don't happen, and to help me to be the second pair of eyes that I so desperately need in this situation.
No problem.
Oh, and I've managed to partially derail my train because I didn't check my switches. So we're gonna use the five-fingered crane. I want no comments about needing to do certain kinds of tests involving a cup. That will not be necessary, I can assure you.
Oh, and Ralph Heiss is like, yeah, you're right, Ralph. We absolutely could run a 1980 session. That would be a pretty wild experience. given the cabooses we would need and everything else, 100%.
Yes, no, I mean, that was something I was through putting together most of these trains, and then I realized, oh, I don't have to worry about cabooses, thank God. That was a
right.
That was a moment of relief. Okay, so we're
gonna... for sure.
So
now SEEL should end up on two, as we talked about, right?
It should, although two is currently occupied by the CN.
Right. So I would hold SEEL out then there at the interlocking where he is.
Okay.
And we're going to continue with the schedule, and because the next, which train is that with the CN power?
That's the CNSE.
Yeah, so that's not till 6.
Yeah, because
we actually might run him early, although he turns on 2 as well.
Did I set this up wrong?
See. So he goes to 2. Oh, yes, because what happens is that train, if you look at line 1, SEL, he goes to 2.
Oh, becomes CNSE.
He becomes CNSE.
Oh, okay. So
correct.
Then all I need to do.
We could also, it's up to you, but we could also run the CNSEX. We could run that as an extra train and then run it again as CNSE later on. It's up to you.
I'm going to take it off because I just realized I want to show the power swapping, which we're going to get to. So I'm going to put the CN power over here. That explains why I didn't have room. Okay. So, because this is part of what I and a lot of others, what I've come to respect by the virtue of staging this, but I've been told by others, is just how tightly the workings of staging are and the ability to reuse trains by swapping power, swapping ends of power. I think that's part of the magic of this system that you've created.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm very fortunate to have my brother in arms, Jack Trabacchino, who I met when I was 10 years old in fifth grade. Just we happened to be placed in the same homeroom, and no kidding, what a what a difference that's made in my whole life, because Jack is a master of this sort of logic, the linear logic of railroading. And so, thanks to him, the whole idea of turning these consists to represent different trains in different directions with different power is very much facilitated by Jack.
So I am checking in on TV6, which it's a good thing I did because it decided to stop on the main line in the middle of nowhere for reasons I'm not quite sure what it's trying to do. It's not even stopped at a signal there.
Yep. Yep. So he can, I mean, basically, and we're looking at the disposition for TV6. He's going to come down to track 5. So he's on 2 now, and he'll come all the way down the hill and cross all the way over to track 5 and head up to Midway halfway through staging.
I'm wondering what it decided to stop for. Oh, while I'm figuring this out, something I wanted to ask you. How long are your trains typically in terms of car counts?
It varies from about 20 to 25 cars for intermodals, and the auto rack train is a little bit less than 20. Usually it's 16, 17, 18 because they're such long cars. And manifests will range, like TOMT or SEEL, they'll range from about 30 up to about 50.
Gotcha. Because that was something that I was trying to balance as well with your with the staging is how long a train can be in order to fit because you've got multiple trains on multiple tracks.
Correct. And so some of the, basically that's the idea behind midway crossovers. Midway crossovers connect track 4 and track 5 with a universal about halfway around the loop in staging. And that's there to facilitate these shorter trains, the piggyback trains, stack trains, and the auto rack trains. It can facilitate the engine changes there, so you can get things turning on a little more consistent and rapid basis.
All the issues I expected to hit. My AI drivers deciding to be stupid and locking me out of my own trains wasn't one of them. But this is the beauty of having a pause button and not feeling like I'm tying up the entire railroad with these kind of technical difficulties. This is a bit of an odd one. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna make a separate. I'm gonna make a separate engine. I'm gonna tack it on, and then I'm gonna manually use that to get our train underway. We're gonna pretend like this train has had a failure, some kind of mechanical failure, and I've just magicked an engine from Selkirk to retrieve it.
Oh, there you go.
And now
nice.
All right. Now our TV6 is back underway. Let's see what's going on in our staging yard.
I love it.
Oh, I've managed to have a face-off because I've got the TOMT on 2. Is the TOMT supposed to go on 1? And I screwed that up.
Yes, we talked. TOT was going to stay on 1 the whole time. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where I use the very big magic 5 finger crane to put TOMT on 1, which then means that they can both go on their respective tracks. And I think everything is now as it should be in the world, at least temporarily.
And Nick, don't feel bad. This is like any rookie dispatcher, and Ralph will back me up on this. It's because he's dispatched this railroad a couple times. It backs up on you quickly, even at 1-to-1 time. Those staging assignments are absolutely critical because everything turns and everything represents something else next time. So this is entirely as it should be.
We're going to see that at play in a moment with the Well, I guess what we get now that we've got two back, we need to. Okay, I need to create more room on one. So this guy I'm going to stop because he's clear. I need to move this train up on one so that I have room to get our TOMT into one.
Yep. And that's one of the jobs that people will notice on when you come to an OC section someday. The train master is constantly working with crews to advance sets of power and advance other consists to make sure there's enough space behind them for other trains to pull in. It's a constant rotating process.
Yeah, and once we get the SEIN out, because I think the TV6 is still moving. Yes, the TV6 is moving.
All right.
So we've got our TV6 out and about. So I could get the SEIN out. And while that's going out, we're going to look at this business of switching motive power. Because I think that that's part of the stage magic.
It's part of the illusion, 100%. And W2 Fan 5, yeah, face-offs. Look, there's a reason why you get restricted signals and why restricted speed is so important. It's actually a whole rule on the railroad where restricted speed is not a speed limit. It is 20 miles an hour on some, 15 on others, but it's also watching out for equipment ahead and also watching out for broken or misaligned switches. So the whole idea of railroading, sometimes you can't guarantee every move. At slow speed, the engineer has to be able to back up and be responsible for the safety of that move. So sometimes face-offs happen. It is part of railroading.
Oh.
What you don't want is a collision.
Right. You want it to realize the mistake before it's too late. Okay, next we've got SEIN. That's on 4E. That's a westbound. And that is going to be this one right here. This is our...
Yep, so he's coming off 4 and he's going to land on 3. And so we just want to make sure that we've got space for him on 3 when he gets there, and it looks like we do.
Oh, why did I root T... And this is me going, okay, everything's going great. And then realizing TV6 is about to come in on tracks that there's no way we could do anything with it. So...
You can bring him to a stop down there and hold him out of 274.
That is what I think we will do. So, yeah, so we've kind of rewound him a bit.
He should go down to track 5 once we get the train on track 5 off of track 5.
And that train on 5 is going to be... looks like 550, TV 550, which goes, right after.
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
So,
yep. Except I don't think it's not going to stop because it wasn't under AI control. So I'm going to rewind it again so it stops in time.
Chris Lee, good to see your name here. Chris Lee is one of my regular dispatchers, and actually, Chris is far more an expert on what trains go where on this railroad than me. So,
oh, great.
Nick, if you've got questions.
Well, I'm more than happy to ask questions. It's also people are gonna, your regulars are gonna be watching this and going, "What the heck is he doing?"
Well, every session ends up a little bit different. I mean, there's always, we do have breakdowns. We do have miscommunications or misroutes, and part of railroading, this is what makes it so compelling. And it's interesting because YouTube Fan 5 here keeps commenting as someone who actually is out there railroading, right? And you look at what you do on the railroad, you see no failure. You have to deliver the operation. Oh. And if you don't deliver that operation, there's serious consequences, like to the whole national economy. It's actually pretty interesting quickly how things get out of control with that. So part of modeling railroading is adapting and moving on. So we're right on schedule.
Yes, we're on schedule to be off schedule, and hopefully one day be on schedule again. But we've got a couple of easy shots here, and this one I even thought ahead and lined it up into staging correctly on the other side. So this one's going to do its thing. We don't have to worry about that. So this is SEIN we've got heading out now for those of you following along at home. Quick reminder, you can download the Excel spreadsheet that is what we're referencing here. Link in the YouTube comment, or not YouTube comments, but the description of this YouTube video, and you can see the spreadsheet and you can play along at home. We've got SEIN that's heading out now. We're about to send out TV 550 right behind it, which is going to allow us to bring in TV 6. So there is SEIN heading out. Now I'm going to jump. Oh, no, I meant to press this button. We're going to get this one set up with an AI driver as well. We'll make sure all of the switches are good for it. And then actually I'm going to babysit it by this signal, because otherwise it's stopped here because it goes, well, Nick, you've got a train in the block ahead of me. And you're right, I do. But I trust myself here. So we're gonna get this by the red signal, and then we'll let the signals on the layout help to space it out from the SEIN that is leading it. Man, this is just insane, Dave. I mean, it's wonderfully insane.
Well, it's I have to admit, like, when you first proposed the idea of this, I'm like, either this kid is absolutely brilliant, or this or we're going to have a really interesting discussion and his brilliance will become even more obvious. And because I mean, the fact that you've created this is pretty brilliant yourself, but the fact that we're making it work, and I'm not a regular dispatcher of this railroad, you know, Chris Lee definitely is, and but we're working through it. This is railroading, Nick. This is what it's about. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was so excited to be part of what you're creating here, because I think that, you know, what the Onondaga Cutoff is, and for everybody listening tonight, everybody watching this feed, this is why railroad model craftsmen are still relevant magazines. This is why Facebook and Facebook groups and YouTube is still relevant, even though the world is changing so quickly. There's so much going on. The Onondaga Cutoff is out there for you guys all to dive into. What we're creating here is something I want more people to be able to do in the hobby, and that is create the camaraderie in operation that is so important for how the actual world works. When you go to the airport, or you take a cruise with your family, or when you take your kids on vacation and you're hoping for a scheduled train, there's a lot of people that come together to make that happen, you know. Absolutely. And so here we are, we're watching trains meet on the OC in live feed. This is happening thousands of places as we speak in real life right now around the United States of America, and probably in hundreds of thousands of places around the world. And yeah, is TV6 going to have to wait sometimes? Yeah, they're going to have to wait sometimes, because the success of the entire whole is more important than any incremental progress of one or two. And that idea is so important for societies to work. And here it is, like in graphic display. It's fascinating.
It's a lot of, this is fun. And I think that what I hope that you guys who are joining us are getting by this, other than, boy, there's a lot going on, is that there's so many tools out there. You know, part of why I love doing this show is I want to help you guys to see kind of, you know, thinking through the process of how you build a layout. Ordinarily, we're building the layout. Today, we're playing with it, but we're playing with a very complicated one that has a lot of things going on with it. And while it is complicated, it is also feasible. Like, what I like about certain designs is the ability to, if you, obviously, Dave, you have a lot of great friends and you have a lot of great crew who run this regularly. But if you wanted to enjoy this on your own, but not just from a standpoint of watching trains go around in circles, but feel like you're accomplishing like a piece of the work at hand. I'm realizing I didn't line myself for the.
I think you absolutely can enjoy it by yourself. The cool part about the schedule that we're looking at, the spreadsheet that we're looking at, is that you can, wherever you stop last time is where you start the next time. So if we stop at, instead of stopping at 1:30 a.m., if you stopped at 4 a.m., well, if you look at the schedule here, you'd pick up with COSC at 4:0400. So if you want to run the trains by yourself in the interim, you go ahead and do it. And then you update that for the next time you're running with a group so that it's got just what you need.
And I think I like layouts that, I mean, there's something to be said for layouts that always need the all hands on deck, and that's how it comes alive. But obviously, plenty of us, we're in situations where we don't have a lot of people close by or so forth, and so I'm interested in what are ways that layouts can expand to accommodate multiple people running at once, but can also be satisfactory and not feel like you're swimming in this giant Olympic-sized pool alone. Um,
Well, that's absolutely part of it. Yeah, it looks like we left ourselves lined at 280 there for SCI. So SAIN is going to run through the yard, and that's not the end of the world. In fact, that was a train that used to work the yard, so that's not that unprototypical at all.
Yep, I just have to figure out where it is finding that red stop signal, and then something tells me it's.
Should be within CP 282 there.
Just need to make sure that I've got it lined. Oh, actually, I want to cross it over. I'm gonna need to cross it over here.
Yeah, and also, it's funny. You're because you're dispatching by looking at the railroad almost as a visitor would, like you are through the software. In some ways, that's more difficult than seeing the dispatcher screen.
Mm-hmm.
Because the screen shows you in very, just very basic graphics what's occupied and what's not. And so that's why real dispatchers don't get a trackside view.
Yep, it is.
They get the computer view.
It is harder, and one of the things that I wish this platform supported was the ability to have CTC boards. I'm working on that capability as a kind of retrofit kind of way, but it's not inherent to the software.
Even that is brilliant, Nick. It's you got to admit it's really cool.
Oh no, I'm having a blast. I hope you guys are as well. This is it's there's so much going on with this that even me trying to kind of bungle my way through running multiple trades at once, it really comes alive. I definitely want to I want to convey that there's something great about being able to learn through a means like this. And now I've set the switch for the main, so now we shouldn't have any adventures with that main anymore. So since those trains are okay for the moment, now we get to take a break and hear a word from our sponsor, Broadway Limited, who have a pretty cool product that actually ties in, conveniently enough, with the nature of today's stream being Conrail. So stay tuned here on Great Train Layouts Live. Here's a look at Broadway Limited. Here's a look at Broadway Limited Imports Conrail SD45 model with DCC sound for HO scale. This model includes LED lighting for the lights, front and rear marker lights, number boards, and cab. It features full startup and shutdown sounds, including the handbrake being applied when turning the locomotive off. You can switch between two different horns with your basic DCC interface. The slow speed performance on this is excellent. My favorite sound feature is the ability to throttle up and down independently from your locomotive's actual speed, either coasting along at high speed or working hard at low speed. And we're back. Thank you again to Broadway Limited for sponsoring this live stream and for sending me that SD45 to play with. That is a really nice model. Uh, I don't know if you have
I
any.
have to admit, I don't have any of their locomotives right now because they haven't made anything that's quite fit my era that's been in need, and I'm trying to stay focused on what I can actually fit. One of the challenges building a railroad the size of the OC is that you can spend all sorts of money. This hobby is just incredible right now. You hear it on different podcasts, you hear it all over the internet. My my buddy Lionel Strang is like, the hobby is growing so fast that it's going to explode and we're all going to be covered with model railroad goo. This is one of his little
Yeah,
catchphrases. But
I've heard him say
you know,
that before.
oh my god! But the point is that there's so much good stuff. So one thing that Broadway Limited has, their engines are beautiful, getting better as time goes on. Couple things they can work on, and I want to open up the discussion because any manufacturer, any rep from any manufacturer, if you've got Conrail questions, drop me an email. Get in touch. Go to Onondaga Facebook, Onondaga Cutoff Facebook, I should say. Drop me a personal message or a contact. We can work out some of these challenges as they go forward. But I think that an even bigger point than that is that all of these manufacturers are just improving across the board. And when you look at what Broadway Limited's doing for business cars, they're starting to do the Union Pacific business car fleet. I'm really excited to use those as a starting point to kit bash some Conrail stuff. And likewise, maybe even convince Broadway to do some Conrail stuff as the business car fleet goes forward. It's really, really exciting.
That's excellent to hear. Yeah, I love the fact that they're tackling business cards because it's this kind of, it's the challenge that every business car is somewhat different, but so many modelers would love to have that full business train or even partial business train on their layout. So I'm glad that it's something that they're beginning to tackle with their Union Pacific offerings.
It's a really cool idea, and you look at what Rapido Trains is doing with some of their cutting edge stuff. They're having some growing pains, but who wouldn't? I mean, your company is growing in size, double digit percentages. Look, this is a sign of success, not a failure. Things are getting better and better. Oh, I see the 550 power coming out, looking good.
Yep. Yeah, trying to keep myself somewhat to something looking like a schedule. So we're gonna line it up right behind TV. What am I on? 201. What is that I have up ahead?
Yeah,
No, 550.
Like that should be 550.
Yes.
So that's actually going to be his train. The 550 power will pick up the cars that I forget who they came off of. I'm trying to look to see now. It should be the stack train. 550 should pick up the stack train when he gets there. So that's the cars. That should be the dedicated stack train with no trailers in it at all when they get down to the bottom of the hill. But they picked that up all the way down at CP 295.
Oh, then I probably put the wrong cars on my 550. So we could swap those out.
That's okay.
But
well, it's up to you either way. Yep. But that's another one of the interchange operations we model during a regular operating session.
Now for a change of pace, we have a train going into its correct track and staging. We've got the SEIN going in there, and then right behind it is going to be the 550, which is going to go into track 4. So once that's cleared up, I'll route it to 4. Meanwhile, we can grab power for we've got COSC about to go out.
Yeah, and he'll make a set out at Onondaga.
But he's going to have to wait anyway because we've got this parade of trains coming into staging. So while he's waiting, we can grab the CN power and tack it onto onto its train over here, which originally its train, again, if you're playing along at home on the spreadsheet, this was the SEEL, and so it is going to become the CNSE. Oh, I think I need to move something up. I think I'm, or did I completely fill track 3? I completely filled track 3.
Oh boy.
And why did I fill track 3? What do I have next coming out on track 3? Oh, TV 201. So I guess I could send.
Yes.
So I could send 201 out, which will give me the room that I need to get these two in.
Yep. And
Okay.
and 201 is he becomes 550. So that's your stack cars. So basically the 550 power, is the 550 power still in the yard, or did you route him out? He's
No,
out of the yard yet?
it's out of the yard. It's waiting to. We need to create a little bit more. I'm going to cross that over. We've got to create enough room for these two trains to fit in, and then our other trains will come from off the scenic portion of the layout.
Yeah, so basically 201, he's going to run from 3, he lands on 4W. So you're going to run him from where he is on 3 out at 274 up the hill. He'll run the whole railroad, and when he comes into the other end of the staging yard, he'll land on track 4W. And what that's going to let you do then is get 550 out and back the other way. So that'll give you the room on 3 to pull up the other train on 3, so we can do what we need to do out at 95. Nick, I'm very impressed. This is not easy to do in real time.
Well, I'm glad that I'm passing with your endorsement, Dave. Hopefully, your crew who's watching along at home will feel like I'm doing a half competent job of keeping the freight moving. It's fun juggling this, I will say, because I was talking with our mutual friend Alex about, because I know Alex has done dispatching for you, and he was like,
Yep.
yes, it's freight dispatching, but it's all the back end stuff you have to keep track of. I think people think of dispatching, and on a lot of layouts, the focus is just on what's going on in the main. What's interesting about your design is that the dispatcher has to be equally aware of what's going on in staging to keep everything moving from that perspective as well. It's really a fascinating mix.
And I think it adds to the challenge for both crews and dispatchers to make that happen in real time again. So it's a fun experience. I think I see Darren Daz from Australia who's found our feed. At this point, it's good morning, right? No, actually, it's probably close. It's almost afternoon in Australia where you are, Darren. Good to have you here.
Well, it's good to have you here. And just to recap, we are running the Onondaga Cutoff, the famous Onondaga Cutoff, which you've probably read about in one of the various model railroad publications. Dave Abeles, its builder and designer, is here to provide insight into his design, make sure that I'm doing a decent job of keeping all the trains moving. In a sort of domino style kind of way, because of course Train Z doesn't really, it allows for like basic artificial intelligence, but not an advanced level. So we're kind of sending trains out, letting them go around the layout proper, and then we're bringing them in, and we're trying to sort them in this moving, shifting Rubik's Cube of a puzzle that is the staging yard, which absolutely love. I will say this is a fun dynamic to try to work out.
Well, I think, one of the concepts that Jack Trabacchino, again, my right-hand guy when it comes to operations planning, one of the points that he made is that staging on the OC represents hundreds of miles of high-speed mainline in both directions. It's not a slow yard. It's not a port. It's not a car float. It's not, storage sidings. It's representing 50, 60 mile an hour mainline track in both directions. And so quickly, some of the chaos and staging can back up upstairs, especially when you have one person trying to control everything. You can do it, but this is why it takes a team of people to run a trunk line railroad.
So at this point, we're getting out some of the power from Island. Now, is this is Island Yard? Yes, this
Yep,
engine
that's
facility.
exactly right. And what you're on Island 7 there, which heads out to the 74 lead, but you can cross over to go to the 94 lead as you see fit. So actually, excuse me, yeah, that's the layoff track. So straight ahead where Amtrak is sitting there, I see the marker lights on the left.
Yep.
That's the whole Island Yard so the 6-track area is Island Yard proper. you go up under the main line and you duck underneath, and that's where you come up against 74 and 94 lead. So there you go. Yep.
So we're getting our CN power staged here. I can probably get it. Let's see. I need to get it onto 3, if I remember correctly. 2 or 3.
I thought it was
2.
I think it was on 2.
2. So I should be able to do that before its counterpart shows up. So we'll get that routed over now.
And part of that timing game is why dispatchers are so challenged on this railroad. So the Conrail Mohawk dispatcher, who on the prototype ran trains from just west of Selkirk Yard all the way out to CP 296 west of Syracuse, they actually did this ballet in Selkirk as well as DeWitt on a regular basis. This was not exactly as we do it, but it was an ongoing coordination between yard operations, main line, and power moves. So it's a lot of fun to be able to add that to the mix here.
So do you have like a hostler crew, like somebody who's getting the power in and out, or is that the responsibility of whatever road crew is assigned that train?
Usually the road crew that's assigned that train will certainly stay with that power off assignment and then take the power to its final disposition on the island. To set up the train, it's a mix of either somebody that the train master is up to him. So he'll grab a free crew and say, hey, I need you to move CNSE power from the island over to 295. Can you take care of that? Yep, okay, here's your power. I've lined you out to the island switch, talk to the Mohawk dispatcher. And then the train master moves on to his next task. That crew's responsibility as a hostler is just to get the power to the train like you're doing now with the CN power.
And just in time, we've got our counterpart here, which is 550, and they're coming in on 4. And yes, I did set them to 4, so I know they're we're not going to get any rude surprises there. Yep. Matthew Bester, some trains creator needs to do an RTL turbo liner so that there can be the Iroquois like on the OC. I am here for it. Yes, I'd love to see that. Yes, I've had to do, and we'll see. We'll actually be bringing Amtrak out in just a minute. I think that they're not too far off.
No, A280 should be out at 4. Yeah, basically 4:30 to line themselves up. They'll come out and get ready to go, and then they end up running eastbound from CP 295.
I realized I parked my hoppers in not an ideal place, so I'll need the 550 to push the hoppers out of the way a little bit further down for the much later coal train that we have. I'm forgetting its symbol. But we've got 3 units. We should be fine for making that shove. And then...
Yeah, I think the coal train ends up being the UBO. That should be a westbound coal train later on. Yep. Or yeah, exactly. Eastbound coal train, I should say, later on.
Which makes me wonder if I have it set up on the wrong track here. I mean, it's supposed to be on 4, but I also needed to bring this on 4.
Well, a UBO can run any time, and then he can actually be shoved down to the island as needed, because he's actually stored on the island in the off session.
So, I thought he was stored on 4.
Well, he is usually until he makes his run, and then he may end up going back. So we'll figure that out as we go along.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay.
That's it. Let's not borrow tomorrow's problems for today, Nick.
I'm all for that. For some reason, despite having a clear, this guy has decided he's not moving yet, so I'm going to manually get him underway.
Ralph Heiss comment, where's the virtual beer? That's a good question. I'm not sure if Train Z has a beer logo. I can tell you that I'm drinking a real-time Pilsner while we're doing this, which is a lot of fun. And I see Double YouTube 5's got a question as well about DPUs. DPU is a more recent technology. So in the 1990s, the only railroads using distributed power were Southern experimented with it down, and even before NS in the 80s. And I think SP was playing with it out west a little bit, maybe BN. But today, there's DPU just about everywhere. So they do have it up in central New York now. but not in my era, not in the Conrail era.
Uh, that would be another interesting thing to throw. I mean, man, if you did Norfolk Southern, or well, I guess it'd be CSX. If you did CSX era, if you did CSX era, you'd have less trains, and they'd all be gigantic.
Exactly.
All right, now we get to spice it up. We've got a little bit of well, we've got two things about to go up. We've got TV 201, which is another westbound, which is this guy right here. And that one, since everything else we've been sending is just westbound, we can just tell it to drive, and it should know what to do once we have the switches lined correctly. And then for an eastbound, we've got our patiently waiting COSE here. Now, the COSE does have work in Onondaga, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, COSE will set out at Onondaga and generally works off the North Runner to do that. So when you get him up to CP 282, you should route him right into the North Runner, and we'll do his work from there.
Alrighty. So that's one I'm probably going to want to babysit because I don't trust it to do its own thing. But let's see where our TV 550. Okay, there's our TV 550 power. They're coming down now, so they'll be down here in a couple minutes. Let me think. Is there any other power swap I need to do at the moment with anything I've run?
CNSE is set up. You've got COSE set up. TV 201 is on the move. 550, his power's coming down. So, no, I think we're in good shape for now.
Excellent. Okay, and 550.
Because 201, so the next guy, Amtrak's got to run, and SEBU will be next, but that's not for another hour, so we got some time.
Right. Which our real time is what, 20 minutes? Well, our if it was fast clock, that'd only be 20 minutes, but we're going to give ourselves a full hour because who knows where we'll end up with things.
We're in good shape, and it was, we had an open house here on the Onondaga Cutoff, and this is something we try and do on now and again. So there's a couple different places online, but if you, again, the Onondaga Cutoff Facebook page is just Onondaga Cutoff at Facebook, and if you go on to Google Onondaga Cutoff, all one word, or two separate words, you're going to come up with a couple different hits. My blog is out there. The Facebook page is out there. There's, again, a bunch of articles that have been in the media, and open houses are one of my favorite things to do. It's always a great opportunity for people to see the railroad in firsthand and get a taste for what we're actually doing. I try and have the railroad running during operating set or during visits or open houses, as well as basically a small operating session. At the last open house, we actually ran just like this, 1-to-1. So the fast clock was not turned on. And we basically ran a couple hours of OC operations just in the same way you're seeing it here. And it was just awesome. This busy. So it's pretty cool to see part of the schedule run in real time.
That is very nifty. All right, we're bringing TV 550 in just to clear up the staging ladder and to make sure that it's set to go when its time comes. Clear up a little bit more, and then we should be good to. All right, so now we're gonna take COSE here out, and you can walk us through what we have going on with it. Partially because then I think maybe we could spend a little bit of time doing switching in Onondaga Yard. I believe I have cars set up there to switch.
All right, cool.
So we can double check. That's another tab on this wonderful spreadsheet, which again, if you haven't downloaded it, in the description of this video on YouTube, you can download the Excel, and then that will help you to make hide and hair of what we have going on here tonight, all this train movement, and help you with regards to creating your own sessions. Fair warning, I spent several hours staging this, and I've only staged like a third of the day. So the good news is once you've staged it, you can run it pretty much in perpetuity because all the cars are there. It's all about how you exchange them between the different trains. Darn it, I forgot to cross that guy over well, it doesn't matter. I can cross him over later. He'll be fine. I just need to make sure I cross him over at 282. No, actually, he's going to be where I want him on 282. That works. Yeah, I can do that. I can do that as the thing. Except now he's going into Island Yard, which we definitely don't want. So we're gonna.
No, we definitely no. That's yeah.
We
But
can
might want to
make.
rewind that one.
Yeah, there's things that we can make work. That's not one of them.
That is not one of them. That's a fact.
Okay, so, uh, yeah, so we'll have him run Ron Main, but that's okay because he's gonna appear pretty quickly after the fact anyway. So if he's Ron Main going up to 282, that's not really an issue. Um,
Well, you know what? If you're rewinding it, why don't you take him all the way back and put him up track one? Because he's gonna go in the North Runner. So if he's going in North Runner, you're gonna want him right over on track one, right from CP 274, or excuse me, from 295.
oh, okay.
Because the way 282 is set up, you can't get to the North Runner if you're on track two.
Oh no, no, no. He's on one.
Then we're good. Track one is where we want him. Good. Okay, excellent.
Uh,
Yep. Okay, good. I see him now. Yes.
yes, yes. I don't disagree with you that this would be far easier to do from a CTC board, but we like challenges here. Slash, we don't have the ability to do a CTC board in Train Z yet. I want to figure that one out.
I admire your courage with this and your persistence. This, it's been tough tracking a date down. I got little kids and full-time work, and I know you've got full-time work, and so trying to find a date has been a challenge. And your perseverance means a lot to me. It's a lot of fun to do this. I think there's a lot of people here that have not seen the OC before, and it's pretty cool to be able to expose everyone here to the Onondaga Cutoff and the operations. This is definitely a new venue for us. It's very cool.
While we have a moment to breathe, although I'm recognizing I need to cross him over, otherwise that's going to cause issues with so he's going to go. He's going to go opposite Main. But we could actually take a moment to appreciate more of the traffic just going through. We've got a TV train following a manifest here. Which also means I'll need to set them up for return. But I'm not going to worry about that until we get our Santa Fe guy into the yard. Okay, what is he stopping for now? He shouldn't be stopping. He should be just going through. Sometimes these guys are a little bit too picky about signals. I mean, yes, it's a good thing to be picky about signals, but they also don't understand, the AI doesn't understand the concept of staging, so sometimes we have to kind of babysit it by the signals. And, it's okay, you can't actually go past that red. You don't have a crew on there to radio and say, oh, you're cleared at restricted speed by the red.
Yeah, talking by, sure. Yep,
yes. Yep. So we'll get that guy going there. Actually, my initial accident worked out perfectly because then we have everybody where we want them to bring him into the yard. And where do we want to bring him into the yard? Probably on, you said the North Runner?
COSE should be coming in North Runner. Yes.
Okay, well then we'll get this Jeep off of the North Runner and into engine servicing facility.
Yeah, you could put him in, Onondaga engine.
Just so I call this out, because somebody's going to say it, Nick, you done goofed. You forgot a track for the engine facility. I know. I didn't forget it. It's just I am limited by the assets that are available for this game to download, unless I want to 3D model something, which is not my forte. So I couldn't find a 3-track engine servicing facility that looked like Dave's, so I went with a 2-track one. Oh my god, that's rather fast.
So one of the things we can do is set those 2 sand cars that are there. Those can end up going, are those the empties outbound or are those loads going in?
These cars here?
Yeah.
I believe those are outbounds.
Okay.
Oops. Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see. Please
This
disperse.
is this is why we have multiple operators for
Yes.
every OC session.
Yeah. Uh, you mean you don't take great pleasure in trying to get everybody to to run one person trying to run multiple trains at the same time.
Oh, it's hard. It's
It,
hard. During the pandemic, we tried. And Darren Lee, who's watching now, Daz Lee from Australia, um, Martin Jenkins from the NMRA from Australia, Gordy Robinson, bunch of people. We actually had international operators. Lionel Strang from Canada, Alex Lang dispatched this from Pittsburgh, Nick Anchant dispatched it from Florida. Really, really neat. And you quickly find out the limitations of having too many people trying to do too many things. You really need to have the whole, everybody's got their job, and you role play that job. And red is red, and you wait. And if you don't get the dispatcher, you don't. And grab another beer and relax, because that's sometimes that's railroading. That's how it goes.
for sure. Okay, so while he's coming back to reconnect to his train, I'm gonna make sure nothing terrible happens here, because that's a possibility. So what we have here, that's 60, 75. That is with the Cebu. Cebu needs to go into 3.
Yeah, he'll basically exactly right. Yes.
I have no idea where those cars came from. At this point, I'm too afraid to ask. I'm gonna I'm gonna delete those cars because I don't have it in me to figure out where they came from, and they're not important. Uh, so we need to put him in on 3, which is okay. I just need to move things up on 3, but I can do that. I just need to put this guy to drive. Drive. Wait, why is he going?
Matt Betzner, best wishes, buddy. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you at Springfield.
Thanks for joining, Matthew. So we'll get him in, and that will clear the way for him. And we've got the switch set in the right way, so okay, that's all fine and dandy. I'm going to set him to AI so he doesn't do anything crazy that I wouldn't approve of. And I need to set that switch. And then I need
And this is how things look at this time of the morning on the OC. If you look at the staging yard, you've got a lot of empty space out there at the east end at 274, because a lot of westbounds have already run early in the morning.
I'm glad that this is life, or digital art imitating life. That is reassuring. And now this guy needs to be babysat by the signal, so I'm just going to get him by it, and then I'll switch him over to AI. He needs to go in on... let's see.
Now, COSC, you're talking with the Santa Fe power up front. That COSC can basically, he doesn't have to shove back. He can depart through the yard,
Mm-hmm.
go up to 280, and then his destination is back to track 1. So you got to make sure you get him over to 1 at some point, even if you do it at whether it's 280 or 277. It's one of the two.
Okay. I can switch him back over.
Yeah, 274 is tricky, as we found out before, because you can't go from 2 to 1 at 274.
Oh, I didn't want him to go out. Why is he doing that? Come on. Okay, I'm gonna stop you. You weren't supposed to go there. Shame on you. I'm stopping you.
It's so hard to it's so hard to keep track of it all.
Well,
by
especially
yourself.
when they're essentially in separate rooms. Like, it would be different
right.
if it was like it is on yours, where all of this is happening just below the scenery area. But on this, it's almost as if you had to run into the other room to make sure that it's not getting out of line. But we also have a pause button, which I am using at the moment. But so yeah, if we're learning nothing else today, we're learning that there's a lot going on in a very little space. Like
The
it feels
Onondaga
like a lot of
Cutoff,
space, but when you're actually moving everything, it flies.
it flies, and I think that's part of the fun of the Facebook Live sessions. We'll be doing one of those again this winter on the Onondaga Cutoff Facebook page. So for everybody listening, if you haven't checked it out, jump over to Onondaga Cutoff on Facebook, and there's a plethora of information, photographs there, progress on different projects I'm working on the railroad. I have a Patreon channel. If anybody wants to check out the behind the scenes tour over on the Patreon channel, that's the Onondaga Cutoff on Patreon. And there's a blog and other things as well. But the goal of these Facebook Live sessions is to bring everyone in to an actual operating event, and you guys can experience in real time the kind of intensity that we're going through here, for the actual operating session. And model railroad operations is awesome no matter how you cut it. I think one of the most fascinating parts about it is that you can really recreate the atmosphere of a big time operation like Conrail was in the 90s on the old New York Central. And that's our goal. That's exactly what we try and do on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so
there you go. That's looking like a 550. He's probably ready to go.
He is, and he has to. He's going to have to also go long main because of 201 taking up his spot. So we'll get him going, and I should be able to AI him. Let me make sure he's going the right way. Left, right. Why are you showing red? I need to make sure that all my switches are set to go. Yeah, I want you crossing there, and I want you going straight there. And I'll babysit it by the signal. Make sure that it is going the right way. Okay, yes, it is going the right way, so now I'll switch it back to AI control. There we go. So that is 550 going out because he needs to go into his space, which he is going to be set for as soon as that goes by, which means we can jump back to our poor beleaguered COSE, who's just coming into the yard now. Because the whole incident with flying through the yard earlier definitely wasn't the thing that was actually happening. Except I forgot to bring him in on the North Runner.
Oh, we can work where he is.
Okay, then we'll work with that. Okay, so yes, these let's look at Onondaga Yard. Let's look at the cars we've got here. So if you turn to the turnover tab of your Excel spreadsheet that all of you are following along at home with, this is what I use to populate the yard. So you'll see 4 park and 3 park and cars listed below. Those are the cars that I've put into the yard.
Yes, awesome.
So I believe that means those are cars that need to be attached to COSE?
Nope, COSE, actually, he comes in, he drops a cut of cars, and then he goes back to the cars that are remaining, and out he goes. So he doesn't drop his whole, he'll drop the first block, first part of the train, and then continue on. So he doesn't have any pickup at all.
Gotcha.
The yard job will come back separately, and he has to go in and classify a couple. So those which you've got set up at 4 park and 3 park is actually outbound local trains for later in the session.
Okay.
That's for 0110 and 0114. So you set yourself up at a good time. You have a little bit of a breather.
Oh, goody. With only the 550 that's going to be going through here shortly.
Yep. So basically, COSE, you want to cut off what you're going to set out so that your engines can get back to it on a runaround move.
And so I could just so I'm going to cut off these 5 tankers and I'll just put them on 2 park here since we've got space to work with there.
Yep. And then you go back against your train and back out to the main line.
Now, on your layout, this would be a yard master saying, here's where you should put stuff, correct?
Yeah, basically the COSE on the way up the hill would switch radios, jump on a different channel, and say COSE to Conrail Onondaga Yardmaster. Yardmaster would respond and tell him what the instructions were. Okay, I want you to come in North Runner. You're gonna cut. You're gonna cut the train that's gonna stay behind out at CP 282. bring in your set out to 3 in the park. You're going to go back on 4 in the park to your train, and give me a call when you're ready to go. And the cadence kind of goes like that.
Gotcha. Which is nice because honestly, what I'm learning through doing is there's so much going on. I mean, even ignoring all the other mainline trains and the staging stuff, there's a lot to be thinking about. And because you've shared this through some of the articles and the books, you've created all this documentation for the railroad. Your crews have a lot to think about, let alone me one manning all this.
Well, and there's a lot of prototype railroaders that love what they do, and that it's a hobby for them as well as a profession. So, all you guys listening who work for the railroad, feel free to jump on the comments here on the live chat. But there really is an art to making a railroad work, because it's the only way you can move stuff this heavy on land efficiently. But that necessarily means that you can only go where there are rails. So the pickups and the setouts matter quite a bit. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to be very careful about making sure you got an open track in the yard so that stuff that arrives has a place to go. And you got to make sure that your setouts are together so that you maximize the efficiency. You minimize the time that it takes for one of these trains to get out of your yard so that you can keep working.
Right, which is what we're doing right here. We've brought this guy in. We got our cars cut off, and we're going to be able to get out as quickly as possible to free up other trains to come in or the yard crew to be doing their work.
Yeah, correct. And basically what's going to happen here is that COEC's got to go down the hill. He's got to land on track 1. So either he's got to cross all the way over from the field yard to track 1 at 280. But since he's up in the park, he can't. He's got to go out he's going to go out track 1 at 280. And eventually, basically you have to make sure he stays on that track to get down to where he needs to go on the other end. So if there's a train ahead of him on track 1, that's all coordination the dispatcher has to work out.
I have a feeling another one of my trains escaped from staging. Now I have to remind myself what 3382 is. 3382 is the lead power for... Oh, SEIN. It decided it was going to do another lap. Okay, where did I park? I parked SEIN on 3, so... Okay, clearly I just have to put it back on 3. And I have a feeling that... Oh no, that one was holding its own. Okay, yay for something... obeying what I wanted to do. Oh, and I think it became at some point, nope. Oh man, that seems like a long train. I have a feeling that 2 trains became 1. It PSR'd itself, basically, is what we had going on here. Because somehow I've got this massively long thing that I think is not what I wanted to have going on. So I need to make sure it stops. Oh, that was one I set to be moving. Because of course I did. Okay. So, and
yeah, while you work that out, yeah, that's a double YouTube fan 5, correct. I mean, as a railroader, you have to deliver the service. It is up to you to find out how to do that. No one's going to tell you what switch moves to make to maximize things or minimize things. So part of it's figuring out how you can do it when you're taking your lunch. Part of it's figuring out, how to make 2 less switch moves for the same number of spots. The rules are there, and that's a framework for you to figure out what you want to do with your time. But it's up to you to manage your work in the field and to do it safely, because that's the most important thing. Is that this is heavy equipment. It's unforgiving. You have to be very, very careful up front to make sure you're being safe. But that's 100% the idea behind the OC operating session, is that, most of us, I'm a career railroader, but a lot of people who come here are not. And we balance that experience with prototype operations with guys that are longtime model railroaders. And what you end up with is a really special back and forth that makes it a lot of fun for all of us.
I have a feeling I have too much stuff on 3, yet I'm supposed to send this guy in on 3. What do I have that's extra here? I've got
Now,
uh,
TV 201 run.
uh,
I think we ran him, right?
201.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we ran 201. It ended up on 4.
Yeah. So SEBU is your next train off of track 3, and SEBU comes from the SEIN. So SEIN, basically, we're going to cut the SEIN's power. That power can go to the island, and then SEBU power comes out. That might be your 3382.
Oh no, here's the SEBU power. It's right over here.
That's 6075.
Yeah, somehow we've got these extra cars on the head end of it though.
Well, that's curious. I don't remember those being there before.
Then maybe they weren't. I'm not sure what power they were with though. Oh, I think that's something for SY maybe? Because I'd made I know what consist I made for that. Oh, yeah, I think they were a loose consist. I'm going to move that to 4 for the time being. Or 5.
Yep.
Because I don't know what else to do with it. I need room.
Well, and again, any free consist can go down to the island when there's a slot. Up, Todd Treaster, good evening.
Except that,
Todd,
would I have needed to send that out before bringing that in? Probably, right?
yes.
Okay, that's why I got screwed up. All right.
Okay. Yep. Fair enough.
So we're going to rewind this back. The amount of
that power
mental
can go to.
gymnastics to keep staging going. The good news, Dave, is that if I ever make it out to your place, I'm going to have a really thorough understanding of this staging. If for no other reason that I will have screwed it up so royally to gain that understanding.
This is look. This is how we learn, and you got to remember that we model a prototype operation, but all we can do in our basement is what can fit in the basement. So those hundreds of miles in both directions, multiple yard masters, 2 separate hostlers and 2 separate engine terminals. All of that is nice to think about, but in the basement, it's all in one spot. So it's all looped over itself.
Let's see. I'm going to try to free this train from itself, which means I'm going this way. And I'm going to try to get it under AI control.
That's such a cool screenshot right there, though, showing 3 separate tracks, 3 separate consists. Really neat, Nick. This is a cool adaptation.
Well, and what's kind of fun with the simulator, I find, is that I built this as a quote-unquote HO scale layout. Yeah, we'll just make it manual for the time being. So when I imported your track plan as a 2D image and then laid all the track on top of it, created the grades, created the scenery. But the simulator doesn't really know it's HO. It's treating this like real scale, hence why we can get up to these models and it still looks like you're standing next to a real model. Or a real locomotive. So yes. I mean, you definitely get the feeling of busy railroad even just by watching this unscenic staging area.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the cool things, especially at night, for those of you that have been to the OC. You know, there's a couple sodium vapor light models that hang onto the layout right around midway. And some guys just sit there and take pictures during the session because it looks like an engine yard at night. There's just constantly something sitting there with the marker lights on, something crossing over, the dispatcher talking to somebody else. And you get that feeling of being trackside in a major terminal at night. And it's exciting.
And now I can make sure I got my 550 underway. I'm going to cross them over at 277, which works out because I also have to cross over the COSE. Yes, this is all kind of sorting itself out.
No, it's moving in the right direction. And this is the kind of perseverance that it takes to railroad. So, you know, whether it's on your 4x sheet of plywood or a shelf layout, or whether you're just getting into operations, you know, some of this stuff is fun to think about. And it forces you to think like a railroad thinks. And this is how you deliver an operation, 100%.
So let's talk about since we since namely I have a moment to breathe from all of this wonderful excitement that I've gotten myself into. Um, and I just need to refresh my YouTube studio and make sure I still am streaming. I think I am. Yes. Okay. So while I'm, oh, there's my coal train.
Oh boy.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of not worried about that, we're gonna say that DPUs were a thing for this one train, so I can have my moment of solitude to talk about this yard, and we can look at what's going on here a bit. Um, so what kind like, yeah,
That's a good one. Anyway,
yes, yeah, yeah. The improvisation is real. But when you were designing this yard, like, because every yard has a function. I think growing, like, as a little kid, you think, well, yards are places you store cards. And then as you learn more about operations, the more you recognize that there's a whole mentality to the design of yards. Um, we've seen it a little bit in action already, but what was your thinking with how you wanted to set this yard up to function?
well, one of the keys was that this yard, like any prototype yard, they're not designed to randomly store cars. They're designed to sort and classify cars for destinations on the layout with a purpose. Every yard only exists because of what it's serving. It's not random, it's not arbitrary. The size of it fluctuates depending on need and cost. But the idea behind Onondaga Yard was twofold. It was to support online industry on the OC, where inbound cars would get dropped off by a through freight, classified into outbound locals, and then switched. And also to facilitate interchange to the Manoa and Euclid, the M&E, as well as Susquehanna. So all the freights, like we're watching COSC here with the Santa Fe Power. COSC is a Columbus to Selkirk Manifest, an eastbound train. He's dropping off cars from the Midwest, and it's a mix of all sorts of things: steel, lumber, grain, cement, some fuel. And all of that is either destined to an online industry on the Onondaga Cutoff, or it's headed to interchange to Susquehanna or M&E. So the size of Onondaga is based upon the number of cars it has to handle at a time. And one of the tabs on the spreadsheet shows the influx and outflow of the cars in the yard. That's the industries tab. And we wanted to make sure that what we built had enough capacity to handle what it takes on a daily basis. And so that's what we're seeing here. COSE made a set out. The yard crew comes on duty. They're going to do some classification over the next couple hours. And then by the time SY1, Susquehanna SY1 shows up mid-morning, there's an outbound train ready to take for them. So they service their power. They drop their inbounds. Those get classified. The power takes the outbounds back the other way in the afternoon.
So, is this a train I wanted out on the line?
So COSE's headed out east. I'm trying to see who this next guy coming in at 282
Yes,
is.
yes. This is a train I wanted to be moving. Okay, good. That is a thing I wanted. Yay for...
But I don't think he goes... Oh, he's on the main line. Excellent. That's what we... Perfect.
Yes,
yep.
Yes, he
well
is
done.
on the main line. So I've got this parade of eastbounds. And I'm just in time to make sure I don't screw up where 550 goes. I've hit the pause button to give myself a moment to think.
Yep.
550 is going in on 4 east, so we can route it there. The COC is going to go on 1, and
so the power off 550 can go down to the island yard when you get a chance, once he's stopped in staging, and once you have a clear route. 550 arrives at 274. He heads over towards, he only goes as far as Midway, but then at 4E, basically you can cut the power off either at Midway or all the way over at 295, and then that power can go all the way down to Island and just get out of your hair. That becomes TV 207 later and goes west again.
Okay, so I'm gonna give this guy an instruction to drive to staging. I want him to go 4 east, so I'm gonna direct him to 4 W. Then I know he's not going to go past his limits. So, yay for knowing that. And then the one behind him. So this providing a little bit of insight. There is a little bit of direction you can do with these trains. So what I'm doing now is I'm giving them specific waypoints. So I'm going to tell this one to drive to, let's see, COSE, that's going in on 1W. I could tell it to go to 1W. Or actually, I want it to ultimately go 1E. And it will go as far as it can. And I think it will actually obey that. We'll see if I set that up correctly. And then last but not least, we've got this guy here, which is going to go to, that's the Cebu. He's going to go to 3W. I'm going to direct him to 3. We'll see if that works as it should. And then hopefully those guys are set for a little while, and I can breathe. So we'll go to the Industries tab, well, let's start with the turnover tab. So what are we looking at in terms of the cars we've got in the yard at the moment? So we can understand what we've got and what's going to happen with them.
So basically, at the moment in the yard, what you've got is a couple locals that are ready to go. ON10 outbound is a turn that starts at Onondaga here and runs down to DeWitt off the railroad and staging, and then turns and comes back. You've got YAON 14 and 20. They're on 3 Park. That's the cars that are for local delivery, and all of those right now are Blue Circle Cement on the Casanova Industrial Track. Continuing down, you've got 2 Park, which I'm showing is clear, but that's where we had, I think, was that COSE's
Yep,
drop?
that's so COSE's drop of 5 cars.
Okay, yep. So then if you continue over and look at the other side of the yard, which is the field, you've got 3 cars up front for Resource Terminal. You have lumber and sugar in a variety of cars there. On the east lead, you have the SEL outbounds, and they're not there now because those went with our first SEL, which we saw in the beginning of the session. So the east lead is a nice place to stack cars that are already classified and get them out of your hair.
Makes sense. So at this stage, I kind of want to catch my breath, which means I want to catch my breath.
We can do.
Because we've got everything going back into staging. I mean, yes, that means nothing will be happening specifically on the main, but I've had a lot of fun on the main. I'm ready for something resembling a little more. Oh, did that end up on the wrong track by its own? Yeah, that should have crossed over and it didn't know to do it. Okay. Well, at least that mistake isn't entirely mine. It should have known to cross over. So I'm going to route it over here. And then that one's where it needs to be. Oh, and I need to bring this one in. So we're going to bring this one in on 3, I believe. Got it.
Is that COSE?
Well, CSE went on 1, 50, 56, which is the power for... Oh, that's 201.
TV 201. He lands on 4.
Okay, let me make sure he's slotted for 4 now. Yep, there is room on 4. So I did something good. Right. So I'm going to give him the direction to go to... I'm going to give him the direction to go to 4W. That way I know he's going to stop.
And then that power, too, can come... So that and the 550 power can both come to the island at any point. And that's, one of the dispatcher's challenges with the train master is to, like, when a train comes in and we're changing power, you've got to move it. When's the best time to move it? Is it right away? Do you have the crew stand down and hold on? Or do you release the crew for another assignment and then assign a hostler to take that power to the island when you can?
Well, clearly I screwed up because now I've got this standoff between the TV 550 and the TV 201. Oh, where did the TV? Yeah, it should have ended up on 4. But I prob
550 should have been on 4E, but at the other end of the railroad. Like he should have stopped at Midway.
Okay. Oh, so it's I see. So it would
Midway
be,
is
yeah.
Midway is what makes that meet possible because you can cross the power out of its own way. Yep.
Okay, that makes
Yep.
sense.
So he should have you should have done. Remember how you set the limits for the eastbound or the westbound? You should be able to do it for both up there at Midway. Midway is totally clutch for moving power around.
So Midway, if we haven't already talked about it yet tonight, there's a crossover right here, which this train is currently blocking, but we could clear that up, and that allows us to get power around itself.
Correct.
So
correct, and that's how you. In fact, you could break the coal train and the train ahead of it, and yeah, you'd have to be able to move the other train there on track 5 up to get out of the way too.
Yes. Well, I think what I'm gonna say is I've made a mess, and I don't know how to clean it up without cheating and just deleting trains. I feel like going with something easier. So let's do some local switching.
We've only got about half an hour left, so I think that's a good call.
Yes, we'll just say that everything can traffic jam itself down here, and we'll do some local switching. So
it's funny, Nick, when you talk to people in the operating session, you've got people that are working the yards, and you've got people that are working the main line, the dispatcher, the train master, and the yard. They can have a totally different experience for 4 hours than the main line. And the main line almost always has a totally different experience and outlook on the whole Did it go well? Did it go poorly? Who did what? Like these guys, they only talk when they need to talk. And so it's a really interesting paradigm, during the sessions themselves.
All right, so I'm feeling, if the crew doesn't mind being called out early, I feel like doing an M&E run, bringing ME1 out.
Let's do it.
So we've got our ME1 power here. No, yes, it is Alco C430s as it should be. No, it is not M&E C430s as it should be. I don't have those in game. So we're using a fictional railroad that's leasing its power to the M&E.
Good. That works.
So, what do we have for today with ME1?
So ME1, when he comes on duty, he's got a little bit of work to do over at Dolger. It depends on what's in the yards. Let's go out and take a look and see what's in the yard.
So we don't have anything in the yard proper. We've got the 3 insulated. The CSX cars are the insulated doors. The green ones are the supply packing material boxcars, and then we've got these 3 hoppers that are, I believe, empty of barley.
Yeah, so the hoppers we can set over to the next track down, the barley track. The 2 green loaded boxcars with supplies would go back behind where the covered hoppers are now, behind them, back into the industry. Okay. And the 2 insulated cars are already loaded with beer. Those can go over to Onondaga. Okay. So that's actually a nice little sojourn there. I would grab the green box cars first. We could pull them alone, then grab our empty barley cars, put the barley cars over, track to the barley track, then spot the green cars where the barley cars are now, and then we can pick up our insulated loads and go to Onondaga.
Great. That sounds like a plan to me.
And that's typical M&E1 work. Sometimes they also work Central Plastics if there's inbound cars, but right now there's not, so we don't have to worry about that this morning.
So on anybody else's layout, Dave, the Alco job would be the automatic, like, this is what I'm going to do. It's tempting here, but you've got so many things that I look at and say, I'd want to do that. No, I want to do that. Actually, I'd rather do, like, it, how many crews of your crews who operate, how many kind of stick with one thing and that's all they ever do when they come over, and how many are like always looking for something new?
There's 5 or 6 that tend to flock towards the switching jobs, M&E or the yard job, yard master, and managers like there's again Chris Lee was on before. We saw his name, Jack Travachino. These are they're regular dispatchers. Al Tillotson is one of my regular yard masters. Ralph Heiss loves working the yard, but Ralph will work. He's very flexible. He'll work just about anything. He's been model railroading for longer than I've been alive, which is pretty awesome. But generally, I would say it's about a third of the guys that like to do the same thing every time, and other guys are just they're up for the challenge. They'll do whatever it takes.
And as far as, because this is a lot to learn, how do you typically acclimatize somebody who, I mean, they know how to run a DCC unit, so they're not like complete novices, but that they're relatively new to operations, let alone yours. How do you typically acclimatize people into your system?
A little bit is just making sure they feel comfortable with the fact that they're part of the crowd. So right off the bat, we do a safety briefing. We make sure, like on the real railroad, you know how to get out of the basement, you know where to gather in the case of a fire. We go around the room and everybody says their name and where they're from, so there's some familiarity there. And we usually try and have supper ahead of time, whether it's pizza or sandwiches, or go to the local brewery and get some takeout or what have you, so that people have a chance to socialize. And then when you get on the railroad, the same paperwork you've been exposed to online is available in print, so you're able to get to know a little bit about what's going on. You know that every track has a name, every train's got a name and a job. And generally, first-time operators are always paired with a veteran, somebody who's been here a bunch of times before, because that opens the door to that kind of relationship, the one-on-one, and people realize that, yeah, you know, it's a lot. There's a lot going on, but you need to focus on what's in front of you. The rest of it is just scenery, rolling scenery. So it's a gradual process, and people only run by themselves when they feel ready to do it. If they're not ready to do it, they want to have somebody with them, that's fine too.
Nice that you have those points of flexibility for people to kind of try all these different positions out, and I imagine they can kind of shadow. Now, how do you structure your train crews? Does every train have both a conductor and engineer, or do you split responsibilities for just the like local trains that have more switching and the road trains just have an engineer? How do you typically divide that out?
That's a great question. Generally, depending on how many people come to an operating session, generally every session has trains that work the yard, or the M&E will have two-man crews. Anything doing a lot of switching, I find that there's a lot of fun camaraderie back and forth between the conductor and an engineer, either with hand signals or on the radio. So I try and encourage those jobs to have two people. Over the road mainline jobs, the piggyback trains, the stack trains, the auto rack trains, manifests that don't work the yard, Amtrak, all of those will get a one-man crew as long as they're comfortable being a one-man crew. And those are good ways also for new people to learn the railroad, provided there's a pilot crew along with them, somebody to ride alongside. And, you know, looking at Todd Treaster's comments and WTube Fan 5's comments, you know, one of the railroading is all about being able to trust yourself to do the job right. And the way even real railroads do that is they call it a pilot. They put new guys with a qualified veteran crew to learn that territory. And we do the same thing on the OC.
It's a great way to introduce people, because I imagine that there are some who really respect what you've done, and they look at this and they go, "Oh my, there's all this going on, and you know, I don't want to break something. I don't want to cause a crash." And being able to have these ways of easing them in, so they could see how it runs and find what role and responsibility interests them the most is a really great way to have it.
It's overwhelming, right? So yeah, so the cars you're spotting now, those package loads would go inside the plant. You leave just the tail end of one of those box cars popping out, and then you can take just the barley cars and put them on that empty track in the middle if they fit,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll pick up the insulateds and head over the hill. On a regular operating session, because this is dark territory, the dispatcher will give paperwork, usually a NORAC Form D, Northeast Operating Rules Advisory Committee, NORAC. And Form D is their train order, their paper train order that gives a crew right to occupy certain track between certain limits. So right now, they're doing some switching. Once they get their outbound train together, they tie the power down for a few minutes. They'd get on the radio or the phone, and they'd call the Morristown dispatcher. They'd copy a permission slip, essentially this Conrail Form D, or NORAC Form D, I should say. And that would give them permission to run over their main line to CP282, and then once they get to CP282, we'll hop on the radio. We would call the Conrail Mohawk dispatcher, and we'd call the Conrail yardmaster, and work out between that trio permission to cross the main line into the yard at CP282, as well as where in the yard the yardmaster wants you to make your set out.
Which we'll do probably in 5 minutes, because I'm
Yep.
just about to collect these cars, and then we'll go up the branch. And I love CTC is neat in its own right. But I do love timetable and train order. I like old school railroading of that variety, and so being able to have a little piece of that. I'm one of these weirdos that loves paperwork when it comes to model railroading. And actually, my first exposure to your layout, Dave, was this right here, which I'm holding in front of my webcam. It's the February 2022 edition of Railroad Model Craftsman, which is solely focusing on the M&E. And it's a testament to how well thought out you've thought this whole thing out, that you can write such a full article on just one little piece of the whole system.
Well, thank you. Otto Vondrak he made a specific request about this. He's the editor of RMC. He'd seen the railroad on the live casts on Facebook, and he's about my age. He actually grew up north of New York City, so he's got some of the same prototype memories I do from the 80s and 90s. And just a kindred soul on the long road of railroading and of the passion that we find in this hobby. So Otto specifically requested, he's like, look, I've seen lots of stuff on your main line. Would you have interest in writing a piece just on the Minoa and Euclid? We'd love to have that in RMC. And I said, boy, that sounds like an awesome opportunity. So I took him up on it. He sent me some ideas for photographs, what he was looking for. And for it to land on the cover was high praise. That's just as much of a thrill as you'd expect. Kind of hard. It's still surreal when you think about it. So a lot of fun. And sure enough, it worked out great. The article came together, and I wrote it with some of my cousins' names as the crew. And
nice.
So had to blend that in. And there's enough that goes on with these jobs that you can really dive into just that part of the operation. So as you watch, we're climbing the grade here, going over the bridge, we're going to cross the river. Like, it's exciting to watch, a railroad do its work. And so here we have the M&E doing its thing. So those beer loads are precious. That's craft beer out of Dolger Brewing Company. It's my wife's maiden name, and a prototype brewery in Manhattan. It was actually a very popular New York City beer until Prohibition. So in my world, they reopened after Prohibition, and they started an upstate New York brewery here in Euclid, outside Syracuse. And the M&E still serves them. So those are beer loads headed for New York City. I love watching them cross the bridge. That was a great shot. And then up the hill, you're going to go by Crucible and come down towards the M&E, and then you would drop yourself, jump on the radio and talk to the Conrail Mohawk dispatcher for permission to cross the main line. Again, Nick, this is just so cool to see it virtually.
Oh, I've got one last treat in store for you, Dave.
Oh, look, I'm
I've got one last treat in store. It's how we'll cap off this whole adventure that we've been on tonight.
wonderful.
Um, so do they have to stop to make this, or would they be able to make this kind of call on the roll?
They could call on the roll. Usually, the Conrail dispatchers will make them wait for whatever else is already lined on the main line. It's not always, but most of the time there's something coming. It's a busy main line, but they can roll right in. If there's permission and there's clearance, there's nothing coming. They get lucky sometimes. They cross all the way over, and then they go in the south runner and find an open track in the field, or they could use that west end crossover to go up to the park, wherever you have a space to drop those inbound cars.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a case of taking it up to park.
Yep.
But would those cars get dropped in park or in field, or does it not matter?
They really either way. The yard job will put them together, and those loads of beer end up going out, I think, on ELSE, which is that evening, 9 or 10 o'clock, the next operating session. Not won't be this one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, something else you should talk about while we're pulling into the yard is how you when we met to go over the plan for this, you talked about how you set up your waybills and your car cards in being able to make it feel random and being able to have cars not just go back and forth from two destinations. Perhaps you could provide us an overview with how you've structured that.
Yeah, and so this was a lot of credit to Jack Trabacchino, who's a professional rail service planner. The goal was not to have cars come in, be dropped off, go to industry, and then come back. We didn't want to have 2-cycle or 4-cycle bills, because the whole thing gets predictable that way. Instead, one of the beauties of a trunk line, especially the Chicago line, and as Todd Treaster will tell you, the Pittsburgh line was very similar. Almost nothing went out and came back on a regular cycle. It was always out and back, but then out and back again from a distant terminal. So the way Jack recreated that for the OC is that these cars from the M&E or from Susquehanna would come in, or cars from locals would come in, go to Onondaga, and then rather be sorted to the same outbound train, they get sorted to an outbound train with the destination of the interchange move next time. Which is to say that these CSX boxcars that we're seeing coming in here on the M&E, they go on ELSE to Selkirk, and then down to Oak Island, the beer gets unloaded. But then rather than those cars coming back next time on SEEL, what'll happen is that SEEL is not the next train. The next train set that works, instead of SEEL, would actually be SENF. And so they come back not as beer cars at all, but they're general box cars, right? They're insulated, but they're general. They come back on SENF in a through block. They don't even touch Onondaga. They go all the way through. So another whole session goes by and they've run the other way. Likewise, the next time they come back on COSE, but they're not in the block to get dropped off. So they run back the other way. And then so now we're 3 sessions out. And then in the 4th session, now we're back with an SEEL train. They come back as SEEL, but then they're going not back to the M&E as beer empties, but they're actually going to SY1. If you guys look at the spreadsheet, they're going to go to SY1 instead. And so then there's another whole cycle. So basically, there can be up to 8 cycles between the same run for any given car. And that what the downside is that between sessions I have to go through and see what's in the blocks to be dropped off, figure out where it came from, and then make sure I route it correctly. But I kind of appreciate that because it gives me a chance to go back and look at the whole railroad, see what's where, and figure out how I want to do it next time. I also have the opportunity between sessions for trains that are in staging to take trailers off and put different trailers on take freight cars off, put different freight cars on. And so even on top of all the regular turnover that you get in the schedule, you've also got actual physical randomness that you can insert into the whole thing. And it just never stops. It's usually it's several years before any car gets back in the same cycle that it was in before,
Wow,
which is pretty cool.
that is amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I think that it goes so far because that's making freight feel random is a challenge, and we all have different systems and different methods, and it can be as simple. I mean, especially if you have like a smaller shelf layout, maybe you're randomizing your cars just simply by a dice roll because you only have one in and out point on your railroad. But there's something to be said when you can have cars being exchanged between roads, but then making it feel random and not like they're always going through the exact same process.
Exactly.
There is something to that. So, okay. We're coming near the end. I think now is the time for the last treat, but I'm going to make sure all my switches are set the way they need to be, because I don't want any surprises while I'm doing this last treat. Which means setting that way and so forth. So you have a lot of Conrail power on in your collection as you need to run something like this. What is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite Conrail or my favorite railroad?
Favorite Conrail locomotive. Like
oh man,
you like the look of it. You have a particular nostalgia to it. Something along
I mean,
lines.
for me, I'm an equal opportunity guy when it comes to Conrail power, but it's hard not to love the C37A. That was a straight up 100% Conrail only locomotive that ran consistently on the Chicago line. I mean, I love the sound of an SD40-2 or a GP40-2. I certainly appreciate a B36-7 or a B40-8, but the C37A, that's it doesn't get much more Conrail than that.
Okay, and what is your number 2 favorite?
I love an SD50.
SD50. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to set ourselves up. We're going to make this super easy. We're not going to make this complicated on ourselves. And I need to make sure I've got the right leader for you. We are going to do a lap of the Onondaga, but we're going to do it from the cab.
Oh, awesome.
We are going to go for a full loop, cab ride style. We are going to experience how tight HO curves are, where you kind of amplify them to real scale, so to speak.
I love it. Love it.
So I've got us on the point of this manifest here. I'll get a nice TV train going the other way with an SD50, which I'll just delete that. One of the other benefits of traits I made. Oh, I'm short on motive power. I need something else. Okay, bring up my menu here and see. Okay, I want an SD9. That'd be kind of cool. SD50. Okay. Now my train's got an SD50 on the lead, so I'm gonna set them up out of staging, so I don't have to worry about strange things going on there. That, or I could just delete everything that's in staging either way, but we'll do about it this way. So we've got that set up to go into scene. We've got that set up to go into scene. I just want to make sure all my control points are normalized. So, because I could just see it, we're running along, then we see that TV train. All of a sudden, now we find ourselves on the same track as that TV train. And the idea is to end on as relatively perfect a note as we can. I think I've got everything set. He says, famous last words, but we'll go for it. Okay, so we're gonna get our TV train going and set up as an AI. And they'll get underway. And then we are gonna go in the cab here of our C30-7A.
Wow.
So You have a YouTube video from many years ago, from earlier dates of your construction, where somebody put a cell phone um, on a flat car. I drove it around your layout. Um, so I figured this is kind of like that, but just
This is
as if
this
it was 1-to-1 scale.
100%, and that was of all people, that was Lou Capwell's idea. Alex's longtime good friend, and I know a mutual contact of you and I,
Mm-hmm.
and that was back in the early GoPro experience days, and Lou did a nice job putting that together. It was a great early look at the OC. We're actually long overdue to do something like that again. So that's stay tuned. There's more to be coming from that.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Look at this. That is so cool. I love it. Looking out of the back, looking back to the front. This is, oh my God, how neat.
Yeah, I mean, this is just. Sometimes this is just kind of like, obviously none of us will ever get to experience our layouts in quite this way. But there is something to be said for being able to go from the top down view to go to track level. The thing that I always tell people is a benefit of building a train layout in this platform before building in real life is the ability to see how everything relates to itself. You could come up with a great 2D track plan, and maybe you even have enough, vision that you can kind of see how the ops work out before you build it. But to be able to complete scenes digitally and pre-visualize them, so you're seeing how this actually looks in a 3D space, how the scenes look relative to one another. That's the fun of what we get to do here on our Great Train Layouts live show and with this software. All right, so now we're about to, or do I have one more loop? Yep, I've got one more loop before I enter the world of the scenic. But I'll fast forward this part.
No, but even still, I mean, you're climbing the hill. It doesn't feel wrong.
Nope.
But it is funny how sharp the curves look much sharper.
Yes, when you're riding it, you're kind of like, wow. My poor passengers are getting thrown side to side here. But here we are entering 282. We can walk over to the other side of the cab so we can see the yard.
So cool. Yep. Yep, there's the M&E. Yep, the whole interlocking looks good. You rumble through it. And there's that yard.
Be able to wave to our motive power that we set aside there.
Yeah,
I gotta give a shout out to my buddy John Clark, who made that. The yard office building is actually from the Meadville yard office, which also was a Conrail yard office, while Conrail was in Meadville, Pennsylvania, on the former Erie Lackawanna.
It's fun to see the transition too from the yard over to the more rural scenery there. As we head out towards the dairy farm in Fayetteville. Very cool, and every time you go around one of these curves, be able to look back and see the cars behind you. That's like one of those railroading things. It's a great experience.
Coming back.
Oh, the meat. Here we go.
And yeah, it's very interesting to be able to look across the aisle. There, crossing the Erie Canal, and you can look across the aisle and see the rest of your train.
So awesome. This is great.
So yeah, I thought you might appreciate this perspective, Dave. A little bit of an adventure for everybody.
Oh my God, this is great, man. What a fun way to end things tonight.
So what did we learn on the show tonight, kids? Well, we learned that I don't think any human on the face of this earth could single-handedly run this railroad. Because I had the benefit of being able to undo things because of it being computerized. There's no way that I would keep my head on straight if I was trying to do this in real life as a one-man band. I guess we can go down the grades. This
Oh,
is
but it's so awesome, bro. This is that was a fun treat at the end. I was wondering what you had in store. I figured, we'd watch a train go by with different power, but this is super, super cool. Really
yeah.
well done, man.
Well,
Neat.
thank you, Dave. And if you too want to enjoy this recreation of Dave's layout, to take Dave's layout home with you, you can go to greattrainlayouts.com and download this route for trains with a Z, 19 and later, and enjoy it from the comfort of your own home. And see if you did better than I did on being able to not gridlock the staging yard. But uh, we'll uh, we'll answer any last minute questions you guys have in the remaining 4 minutes or so we've got before we wrap up here. Um, but Dave, I gotta thank you for coming on the show and talking about what you've put into the layout, your philosophy with the ops. I mean, it's no wonder that you've been able to write so much about it, both on your blog, on Facebook, as well as through these publications, because you've really succeeded in building this world that feels very real and has so much, not just visual detail to it, but operational detail to it, and how much that plays into the experience of it as a whole.
Well, it's very much a group effort, and one of the reasons I think it's been so compelling and so interesting is the fact that it's a railroad where people are allowed to be experts. And so, guys like Ralph Heist that have switched model railroads for their he loves it and he's been doing it forever. He gets to switch. If he wants to try train mastering, he can do that too. Jack Travacchino loves the coordination of trains, and if he wants to dispatch, he can do that too. Other guys come in and they love mainline freights, or they love hostling locomotives, or some guys want to yard master and switch the yard, or just switch an industry. It's a railroad where experts have been allowed to be experts. Signal professionals helped me build the signal system. People I met through the hobby and through the internet, and that I think is one of the biggest lessons learned. And I hope people have appreciated it tonight too. These experts are out there, guys. Like if you want to build something that's exciting and compelling, all you have to do is ask. There's a lot of people that are willing to jump in. Are you going to get some people that maybe don't share the same vision as you? Sure. And you don't have to call them back. But in the meantime, like if you've got a strong idea of what you want to create, what you want to build, those people are out there to help you join that, to join in what you're trying to get done. And the operating session is just where it all comes together. So I all of it is a real pleasure being able to share it and share the joy that it's brought me with all these other people, especially during the holiday season like this. It means a lot to me too, Nick. So I'm really grateful and happy to be here. Thank you.
So it's been great to have you guys along for the ride. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this very different style of Great Train Layouts live. Obviously, given the amount of I checked the date I started building this, and admittedly, I haven't been. It's not like I've been working on this nonstop, but I began this layout in October of last year, and I would estimate that I've put probably somewhere on the order of 20 to 30 hours into it. And it could I'd probably use a few more to be fully polished, but so I don't expect a giant train layout every single month on Great Train Layouts Live. Is all I'm saying. But this one was worth it, partially because I felt like, look, there's so many people who love this layout. If I could build it and have a way to help bring it a larger audience and people can take it home with them and enjoy them, that was part of why I selected this. And it's been great to learn about how it runs. I've learned a lot through learning about how you've made this, Dave. Definitely some take home lessons for me when it comes to how I would go about designing such a thing. Oh, thank you, Ralph, for the compliment. Appreciate that. And thank you, Double YouTube Fan 5, for joining us. Todd, I'm glad that this brings back your Conrail days. Um, And yes, and now would be a great time to mention that if you do like what you see and you feel like you would like help either with designing your layout or you have a track plan in mind, but you want it to be visualized in a train simulator, I do take commissions. You can learn more about that at greattrainlayouts.com. I'd love to help you bring your vision to life because it's so much fun to experiment with different eras, different sizes, different scales here on the show. It's great having you guys along for the ride. So if you like this, let me know. Not that we'll do big ones every month, but more like if you like this sort of play heavy episode outside of the regular ones where we're building the layout and then play testing it. That brings us nice and neatly to at 10 o'clock. So Dave, thank you again for joining us here on the show.
Nick, a real pleasure, and best wishes to all you out there for a happy, healthy new year. May 2025 be peaceful and maybe find a whole lot of railroad progress to come. Enjoy, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.